Good evening, I'm Councillor Martin Cox, the Chairman of Policy and Resources Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this remote meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel, and this will include the instant messaging. Will anybody else be recording the proceedings? I ask this so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening.
Councillor Mackay, I reserve my right, Chairman.
Perfectly on cue. Thank you very much. My role as chairman will continue. However, the responsibility for managing the meeting has been temporarily assigned to the Democratic Services Officer, Miss Parfitt. This officer will not steer the debate. They will merely assist in the implementing the remote meeting protocols. Members are reminded once again that instant messaging will be visible to all those viewing the meeting and must only be used by members to indicate they wish to speak. The clerk will now take the attendance register by reading out the list of committee members who will confirm their attendance by answering present. So please, it's in alphabetical order. Have your buttons mutable and unmutable. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Councillor Bryce? I'll come back. Councillor Chapel-Tay?
Present.
Was that Councillor Chapel-Tay?
Yeah, can you not hear me?
Oh, sorry, it was faint. Thank you for confirming. Councillor Clark? I'll come back.
Present. Sorry, I couldn't get it unmuted.
Apologies, Councillor. I've got you noted down as present. Councillor Cox?
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Scooch?
Present.
Councillor Harvey?
Present.
Councillor Joy?
Present.
I forgot to note, Chairman, my apologies, that Councillor English has given his apologies this evening. Councillor Mackay?
Present.
Councillor Mortimer?
Present.
Councillor Newton?
Present.
Councillor Perry?
Sorry, is that me? Sorry. Yes,
Councillor Perry. Thank you. We have Councillor Pearl with us this evening. Councillor Pearl?
Present.
I note that as Councillor M. Burton has given his apologies, Chairman. Councillor Round?
Present.
Councillor Springett?
Present.
And Councillor de Wigan Shepherd?
Present.
Thank you. And I'll just double check with Councillor Bryce. No, thank you, Chairman. That concludes the attendance.
Thank you very much. We've also heard of those people who are subbing. So that is Councillor Pearl and Councillor Joy, appropriately for Councillor Burton and Councillor English. I now ask the clerk to read out the list of officers present and which items they are presenting or here for.
Mr. Chairman, just a question. Could I please sub for Councillor Bryce until she arrives? It's Councillor Garton here.
You can't do that, can you?
Miss Parfitt, I don't have a list of the subs. Is Councillor Garton? I believe he is on the subs list, so that will be fine until she attends.
I was just checking, Chairman, but yes, you are right. Councillor Garton is a substitute member for the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. I so let him sit until Councillor Bryce is here or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please fire away now with the officers present.
Thank you, Chairman. So with us this evening, we have the Chief Executive, Alison Broom, the Director of Regeneration and Place, William Cornell, for item 18, the Director of Finance and Business Improvement for items 14 and 15, the Head of Legal Partnership and Monitoring Officer, Patricia Narrabor. We should have the Director of Mid-Kent Services, Stephen McGinns, with us also. We have the Head of Policy, Communications and Governance, Angela Woodhouse, the Head of Regeneration and Economic Development, John Foster, for item 19, the Leisure Manager, Mike Evans, Head of Revenues and Benefits Shared Service, Sheila Coburn, for items 16 and 17, Deputy Head of Audit, Russell Heppelston, for item 14, Senior Business Analyst, Carly Benville, for item 14. We have the Democratic Services Officer, Lara Banks, and myself, Olivia Parfitt, as clerk.
Okay, thank you very much. Perfect. You'll see that item 1 was apologies. We've covered that. We've received that from Councillors Burton and English, and therefore substitute members have been received, as you've heard, in the roll call, and they are Councillor Joy, who is substituting for Councillor English, and Councillor Pearl for Councillor Burton. We've heard from all of those people, so we will plough on to item 13, urgent items. Whilst not an urgent item, I intend to take item 19, the call-in of economic regeneration and leisure decision of the Hazlitt Theatre options, after item 15, the strategic planning review update and medium-term financial strategy. So I hope this movement will both mean that it brings it higher up the agenda, so members of the public who have been waiting can speak at that point. I wanted to hear the financial strategy and the financial situation just ahead of that. So if there's no dissent in any way, I will assume this is agreed. Your silence will be agreement. Lovely, thank you very much. Item 4, visiting members. We have received notification from councillors Brindle, Grigg, Hinder and Kimmants for item 19, the call-in of the economic regeneration and leisure decision on the Hazlitt Theatre options.
And myself, Councillor Nagy. Olivia,
My apologies, Chairman, if I've
list.
No, it's not. It's not on here. That's fine. But we can add it in, Councillor Nagy.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid as well for item 19.
Thank you.
Martin, it's Paul Harper here. Obviously, I need to register. I'll be addressing the meeting on 19 as well, surprisingly.
Absolutely. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Martin, also Councillor Powell, I wasn't sure without to register, as I understand, as part of the calling group, that we can participate in the discussion, although we can't vote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've covered the whole of item 4 there, where I would have asked if there are any other visiting members, but you've all notified me, so that's absolutely brilliant. Item 5, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members or officers, please? Okay, thank you very much. I'll take your silence as exactly that. Item 6, disclosures of lobbying. The clerk will ask members of the committee if they have any disclosures of lobbying. They must answer either none or yes and specify the agenda item or items.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to note that I can see Councillor Bryce has joined us at this point. So, Councillor Bryce?
Yes, and on item 19.
Thank you. Councillor Chappell-Tay?
Yes, and items 14 to 19 included.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Yes, items 18 and 19.
Councillor Cox?
Yes, items 18 and 19. I've had emails in various numbers. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Gooch?
Yes, I've been lobbied on item 19. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey?
Item 19.
Thank you. Councillor Joy?
Yes, item 19.
Councillor Mackay?
Item 18 and 19 on occasions.
Councillor Mortimer?
Yes, 18 and 19.
Councillor Newton?
Item 19.
Councillor Perry?
Yes, item 18 and 19.
Thank you. Councillor Pell? Councillor Pell? Oh,
I don't know if
apologies.
you got that. Sorry. Item 19.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Round?
Yes, and to 12, 18 and 19.
Thank you. Councillor Springett?
18 and 19.
Thank you. Councillor de Wigan Shepherd?
Yes, and 18 and 19.
Thank you, Chairman. That concludes the lobbying.
Thank you very much. Item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. There are Part 2 items in this evening. Item 20, the exempt appendix, I'll put my teeth back in, on the Hazlitt Theatre options, and item 21, the minutes, Part 2 of the meeting held on the 21st of September. If any member wishes to discuss these items in detail, then the committee will need to move into closed session. Otherwise, I propose to take all items in Part 1. I also intend to take the minutes, part 2 thereof, of the meeting held on the 21st of October 2020 with the part 1 minutes under item 8. So hopefully without going into part 2. So I will be moving on to that part in a minute. So is what I've discussed there all agreed? Again, I will take your silence as agreement. Thank you. Okay, item 8, the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of October 2020. You can find these on pages 1 to 8. I plan to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of October be agreed as a correct record. If there is no dissent, I will assume this is agreed, and I will not go through the minutes page by page. So if you wish to dissent, therefore you say so and raise which item or page number or item you intend. I will give you a moment to have a quick look. And therefore I say these minutes will be agreed by your silence. Thank you. I will sign the minutes at whatever date I have come into contact with physical minutes and a pen and a person to witness them. Item 9, petitions. There are none. Item 10, the questions and answer session from members of the public. There are 11 questions from the members of the public for this evening's meeting. The question and answer session is limited to 30 minutes. I will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible within this time frame. Any that I do not answer, we will give a written response to, including their original question and then my answer in writing within the next 5 to 7 days. So with that in mind, question is from Miss Kate Hammond. I call upon Miss Kate Hammond for her question.
Thank you, Chairman. How much has Maidstone Borough Council spent on their Heathlands Council-led garden community to date?
Thank you very much, Kate, for your question. Expenditure to date on the Heathlands project is £305,645.97, which is consistent with the forecast made to this committee in April 2020 for this milestone of the project, i.e. reaching Regulation 18B of the consultation stage. I hope that answers your question. Is there a follow-up?
Yes, please, if I could. That is roughly the same amount of money as the annual subsidy for the much-loved Hazlitt Theatre. Do you think $305,645 is a prudent investment of public funds for what is essentially a high-risk investment?
Yes, I do, because it is concerned with the history, the future of our town, and the ability to find sites to deliver the housing that we are required to do. It is part of the whole process that before us that I am very aware that you have been at virtually every milestone. But thank you very much for your answer. And yes, I do see the amount of money that has been spent, and that is over certainly 18 months, 2 years. But to date, that is what is the spend to the penny as of yesterday. Thank you very much, Kate.
Thank you.
Mr. Steve Healy, please, you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman. How much has Maidstone Borough Council made budget provision for over the next 5 years for their Heathlands Council-led garden community?
Thank you very much, Mr. Healy, for your question. £3 million is allocated to Heathlands in the Council's 5-year capital programme. It is becoming increasingly likely that this figure will be shared with Homes England, so possibly reducing the Council's exposure to around £1.5 million over the next 5 years on this potential project, should it go through past 18B, as you're implying. Mr. Healy, do you have a follow-up question, possibly of the same ilk?
Yes, I do, please. What I'd like to ask you is, last week you said to the press that you find yourselves in a situation where you have to decide on the best use of your resources at this moment. Do you think Maidstone Council's pursuit to be a property developer is the best use of your scant finances and resources in the current climate? given the severe pressures on other services and the threat to institutions like the Hazlitt Theatre?
Thank you very much, Mr. Healy. The point you're making here is the difference between capital and revenue. This is the capital programme, and the money that we are going to be talking about later on is the revenue spend. And the revenue spend is made from our income and is finite. We have to pay for capital from the revenue, but as I alluded to Ms. Hammond, that this is not just one pot we're looking at, it's not one sector. This is providing homes and performing a duty that we have to government, and that is providing a land supply and a housing supply to our residents, both present and the offspring of those current residents, and potentially people who wish to move here to be in business or to do anything else in the town, to become a retailer. So they are different pots of money, but I can see your drive and your question, and I hope I've answered it as fairly as possible. So thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
Okay, questions number 3. I'm very sorry. Oh no, I do have it. Excellent. That's perfect. Number 3 comes from Miss Becky Roberts. Is that correct? Sorry, Mr. David Finch. I've skipped a line. I do apologise, Mr. Finch. Question 3 then is from Mr. David Finch. He's not able to attend, so I will ask the clerk to read out the question if that's possible. Over to you, Olivia.
Thank you, Chairman. So the question is, Maidstone Borough Council's own report shows that the Hazlitt Theatre brings in over £5 million of direct and indirect business to the town for a modest subsidy of £243,000 to Parkwood Theatres, a staggering return of over 2,000% per annum. With at least 3 COVID vaccines of over 90% success rates due to start coming on stream from next month, and with mass vaccination planned for 2021, we are on the cusp of recovery and returning to normal social life from early to mid next year, which will enable the current Hazlitt management team to reintroduce its full programme of income-generating events far sooner than the council anticipate. Rather than mothballing the theatre with the resultant loss of experienced theatre staff while still incurring the ongoing maintenance cost of £100,000 per annum, what avenues have been explored with Parkwood to reduce the current management fee during the course of this pandemic to ensure a win-win situation, and thereby ensuring the theatre remains well placed for the social and economic upturn expected in 2021?
Thank you very much for reading that out, Ms. Parfitt. Parkwood have made it clear in talks with them that their normal subsidy of approximately £20,000 per month is still needed by them, even though they're unable to deliver the services under the contract that they have with us. I would like also to just point out briefly that the question came also talking about the £5 million of direct income. Please do not read that money comes into the council. It comes in to the town in everything from salaries, parking charges, which do come to us, unless you're going and parking in Fremlins. But I would really point out, and the reason why I'm extrapolating on this is that there won't be a follow-up question. So I just wanted to sort of make a little bit of extra poignant point to say £5 million is what is assessed to come into the town. It does not come into our coffers, and the £243,000 that goes to Parkwood Theatres is from, once again, as I explained, our revenue funds. So we will be sending that answer to Mr. Finch. So question 4 is from Miss Becky Roberts. Is Miss Roberts in the call?
Chairman, Miss Roberts is showing as being in the call, but as muted. Miss Roberts, if you're able to unmute yourself, please.
Chairman, she was sound checked okay, but I think
Yeah.
she might have lost connection. I will unmute her and see if we can hear her. Rebecca, are you there? No, I don't think she is, Chairman.
Okay, in which case, what I will do, I will, well, let's go to the next person if they're there. So question 5 is Chris Perrier. If I've pronounced that correctly. If I haven't, I apologise. Are you able to hear us?
Oh, yeah.
If that's Chris, carry on. We can hear you.
Hello, yes, it's Chris Perret. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Council. My simple question is, what viable alternative options for continuing the future of the Hazlitt Theatre to actually severing the Parkwood contract has NBC actually researched, considered and costed?
Thank you very much, sir, for your question. Several options have been considered and costed in conjunction with Parkwood Leisure. They include various levels of redundancy ranging from all staff remaining to no staff remaining. They also include Parkwood remaining in contract with all, most, few and no staff, effectively a suspension of the contract. None of the options would have delivered a return of live theatre to the main auditorium. Parkwood have stated that they will require, as I've stated before, the council's continuing subsidy of £20,000 a month, even though they are unable to deliver the service in the contract. That's my response, sir. Do you have a follow-up question to that? It must have relevance to my answer or the original question.
It does indeed. Just the fact that you can confirm that you have actually been in discussions with Parkwood this week.
Yes, in as much as I believe even yesterday our officers and chief exec were talking to them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. If I go back, can Miss Becky Roberts hear us?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Absolutely brilliant.
Lovely.
Sounds
yeah,
like you're in a hall, but carry on.
Yeah, I am. Good evening. Yeah, my question is, I would like to know how Maidstone Borough Council intend to generate the £5 million per annum that the Hazlitt reportedly brings into the county in normal circumstances. This is on the basis if you're intending to run the venue without the current experienced team being Parkwood Theatres.
Okay. Is that there's a little bit more on the end of the question, but
it was a slight little bit, but I thought that bit was slightly irrelevant. So
all right,
just
okay, no, that's fine.
The bare facts.
Okay. In normal circumstances, the theatre's activities have a positive economic impact on the town and the surrounding area of, as you pointed out, £5 million per year.
Correct.
This includes wages paid to staff, goods, supplies provided by other businesses, as well as the turnover and visitor expenditure locally. However, we're not in normal circumstances. The theatre has been closed to live performances since March. Additional expenditure in the local economy is not happening. Non-essential staff have been made redundant and some of the existing staff furloughed. All indications suggest that this will remain the case well into 2021. When it's commercially viable and sustainable to do so, the council will look to procure a theatre operator, and the town will once again benefit from the theatre's positive economic impact to the town.
Okay. My question to that would be that obviously with the vaccine reportedly going to start to be administered shortly, whilst the Hazlitt has quite a small capacity in relation to some other theatres, I personally think, coming from a theatre background, but potentially by maybe as early as Easter time, that situation could well turn around. So it just seems an awful pity to bring things to an abrupt sort of closure. Things I don't believe personally that it will take as much as a year, but that's my personal point of view.
Okay, as you've just finished saying, it's your personal point of view, which everybody is entitled to. You said reportedly and maybe. One thing that we didn't say, and I think is reasonable to put out there, is the current capacity under COVID restrictions is down to 100 people in the auditorium. Easter would be, I think, a potentially reasonable target for some elements to start returning. I don't think myself that, and talking with members of family and friends of different ages, that people are on that scale that we've been shown, 85 plus, and coming down, getting the vaccine first. I think I have heard, and I'm sure other people will have as well, that it could possibly take 10 months to administer a vaccine to the country. And that is why we are planning, I suppose, for the worst. And if better comes, then we will deal with that as and when it presents itself. Please be aware, this is not something we're doing lightly. You've said you've been at the Hazlitt for some length of time. I've been on stage since I was at junior school in there when I was a soldier. And then at various times, my family have been on the stage. I've taken photographs. My daughter's danced there. Believe me, this is not an easy decision, nor has it been a decision to outright close. So I hope that gives you my sense of feeling and answers your two questions. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry you had a difficulty getting to speak to us, Becky. Thank you. Moving on to Miss Julie Hutchins, I believe. Hutchins, are you there and able to speak?
Chairman, Miss Hutchins wasn't actually able to join the call this evening. Would you like me to read the question out?
Thank you very much, Livia, if you do so. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question is, when things go back to normal, can you offer reassurance that the theatre will run with the same efficiency as Parkwood's management under your control? We need a fully functioning theatre in Maidstone and not a glorified village hall setup.
Okay, well, not a glorified village hall, right. When it's commercially viable and sustainable to do so, the council will look to procure another theatre operator, and it will explore all management and financial models to get to this point. To ensure a successful return of live theatre, the council will engage with people and organisations who have experience and expertise in the industry to ensure the next contract reflects the operating environment of the cultural performance and arts sector at that time. In other words, when COVID allows, and when we've looked at different operating models and talked to the many people who currently do use the service and the rooms and the halls around the theatre, not just the theatre itself. Once again, I extended what I've written down as my answer because Ms. Hutchins won't be able to ask a follow-up question, so I thought I'd just add a couple of other points. Question 7, I believe, is Miss Bish. If I turn that, oh no, it's Miss Webb. So, Miss Webb, are you able to hear us and ask your question?
Yep, can hear you. The Hazlitt Youth Theatre looks after young people's mental health and enables those from different backgrounds to mix in an accepting environment. With mental health funding being so overstretched and with Maidstone being an area where class divides are so prevalent among young people, how will the council ensure that this necessary part of our lives is not lost?
Thank you very much, Miss Webb. Great question. One that touches many families. The Hazlitt Youth Theatre does some amazing work and provides a brilliant, safe platform where young people in Maidstone can be themselves and express themselves. The council does not underestimate the value it brings to people's lives. The council also notes that the Hazlitt Youth Theatre, despite the best efforts from Parkwood, has not met at the venue since March 2020. Plans for its return were promising, but they were interrupted by this second lockdown. The Hazlitt Youth Theatre's strength is its people. The council, mindful of its current contractual obligations with Parkwood, wants to ensure that these people can continue to meet, to learn and experience theatre together when COVID conditions allow. When contractual negotiations with Parkwood have concluded, the council would like to enter dialogue with the Hazlitt Youth Theatre and others to identify suitable venues for them, which may include the Hazlitt Theatre or any part of the Hazlitt Arts Complex. I started off at the Hazlitt Youth Theatre that was then, back in 87, it was called the Old Brick then. So I very much appreciate what you're saying and thank you for bringing this up. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, just that to a lot of the people at the Hazlitt, although the youth theatre hasn't been open since March, the dance company has been, which involves a lot of the same young people. And I think to a lot of us, the Hazlitt is more than just a venue for us to meet up in. It's a consistent safe space that young people can have. And I was just wondering what you thought about the prospect of that safe space being taken away from young people.
Well, I haven't said it outright yet, but I'll say it now. We do not want the Hazlitt to close to the residents and the public of Maidstone. There is a lease that we have from the actual people who own the building, and that lease carries on for another 97 years. We can only have the arts and theatre and associated businesses and goings on happening in that space. We can't just suddenly remove it and sell it for flats. It has a covenant on that says it shall remain in this guise for that length of time. So please, when Earl made that decision, it was not easy. We need to get the correct thing, and at the correct time, we will bring this service back to the people who use it. I don't want to be here to close this. That's never come out of my mouth, and certainly was not the intention of Economic Regeneration and Leisure, where this call-in has come from. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe it is now Miss Bish. Can you hear us, and can you ask your question?
Chairman, apologies. Miss Bish actually isn't able to attend. Would you like me to read the question?
Please do. We are in Jackanory corner with our clerk here. Thank you very much.
No problem. So the question is, in light of recent press statements by Maidstone Borough Council confirming they have ended the contract with Parkwood Theatres, please could you explain what your strategy is to keep the Hazlitt running as a profitable theatre? Parkwood Theatres have turned the Hazlitt around in the last 5 years, bringing in a revenue of over £5 million to Maidstone Town Centre. They have over 300 young people in their dance company and youth theatre companies, with more people involved in the Hazlitt Choir. They have a huge network of user groups, and Parkwood Theatres have the professional expertise to run these.
Thank you very much for reading that out. Once again, I will not be able to get a follow-up question. So to be clear, the council has not terminated its contract with Parkwood, and the Hazlitt is not a profitable theatre. It relies on a large subsidy from the council. It is not the council's intention to run the theatre in-house. However, as stated previously, when contractual negotiations with Parkwood have concluded, the council would like to enter into dialogue with Hazlitt Youth Theatre, choirs, dance groups, whatever, all people who consider they might have a use, and we might even be talking about uses that haven't been thought up yet. When it's commercially viable and suitable to do so, the council will look to procure another theatre operator, and it will explore all management and financial models for this at that time. You have once again, though, stated in your question that it attracts a revenue of over 5 million to Maidstone Town Centre. It attracts an income to the town centre. Again, I want to differentiate between revenue of 5 million, because that would be absolutely brilliant if we could have a revenue income direct into the Borough Council's money so that we could use it appropriately. That hasn't been the case. Right, I believe question 9. How am I doing for time?
You have another 8 minutes, Chairman.
Oh, right, let's carry on. Right, Miss Gubbins. Are you able to hear and answer your question?
Yes, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Okay, my question is, have you approached, it sounds like you may have done, quite recently, Parkwood, to ask if they would consider reducing their cost whilst the theatre is closed, to have then, of course, resumed their full contribution when the theatre can fully reopen?
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, this approach has been made. Parkwood have made it very clear that they require their full subsidy under the contract. And if I may say, they would actually could do with more. But there we are. Yes, I've answered your question. Is there a follow-up question? Sorry to keep it short, Ms. Gubbins.
No, that's fine. You've said about speaking with other management companies. Would they be able to be reconsidered? Because reading the press and everything else, from what I've heard from the general public, that you've actually ended contracts with them.
As I pointed out in the previous question, to be clear, the council has not terminated this contract with Parkwood.
But you intend to?
We cannot sustain at the moment the amount of expenditure for them to not provide something that they are contracted to.
But is that not their fault because of what's happening in the world at the moment? There's lots of people and businesses that aren't able to function because of COVID. So that shouldn't be a personal attack on Parkwood. You should actually be supporting the fact that they are still trying to do what they can. And I'm talking on behalf of my young daughter, who thoroughly thrives within the dance company there.
Okay, I'll keep this as brief as I can. All I will say is we are all suffering in this pandemic. We are, via the government, giving out millions, tens of millions of pounds to businesses to keep them going and to carry on. They did apply for government funding. They were not successful in doing so.
And why was that?
We have losses at the moment from our revenue source that mean we have to find the revenue savings, because we do not have that income there to spend. And this is going forward, not for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, we could be looking for savings. So thank you very much for your follow-up question. I'm going to see if I can get to the other two people. So okay, I now call upon Mr. Nicholas Moat.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is on the same topic, and it's what is the cost to the council of ending the contract with Parkwood? I appreciate you've said that that's not been done as yet, but what's the cost of ending the contract earlier than the original term, which I believe was 15 years?
Thank you. There is no early termination penalty clause in the contract. Contract termination discussions have yet to take place, as the council has not yet agreed to take this course of action. So I'm afraid I can't really expand any more on that because it would be included in negotiations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we might have done it. I will take question 11 now and go straight to the last person who is there, Miss Michelle Harris. I've started, so I'll finish.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. I'm very late to the party, but I've learned a lot from this meeting. So my original question was what valid reason are you proposing to close the Hazlitt? Well, that's obviously been answered. Could I ask another question instead?
Go on then.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Apologies for the interruption, but you can't. The question can't be changed.
Well, I'm just going to be repeating the same thing. Can I allow?
She has a follow-up question anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, Miss Michelle Harris, do you ask your question? I'll give you the answer. You have a follow-up anyway.
My original question?
Yeah. You've got another one, and it's probably appertaining to the same subject. So, go on.
You'd like the original question, you mean?
Yes. And then you'll have a follow-up question, which could be the question you wanted to ask me now.
Okay, so for what valid reason are you proposing to close the Hazlitt Theatre?
The council understands the contribution that the Hazlitt Theatre makes to the town centre economy. We are not making this decision lightly. We are not asking to close the Hazlitt Theatre. That is, as I've stressed before, it's not going to be closed. We don't want that to happen. It is closed at the moment due to the pandemic and the restrictions around that. However, Parkwood, under the contract that we have with them, are obliged to deliver a range of services, including a large number of live productions. The main auditorium has not staged a live performance since March. It's unlikely that the services will be deliverable in the short to medium term. The council is therefore faced with paying Parkwood theatres nearly £250,000 a year for services that they're unable to deliver. Your follow-up question?
Okay, thank you. I'm a little naive on the subject, but would the council consider private funding to take over the whole of the Hazlet in its entirety?
When you mean private funding, something like raising money as a one-off wouldn't really work. As I pointed out, I believe, to the last person, these funding issues that we are presented with at this point in time is millions. We have to find these savings. If somebody came forward and said, I'm going to leave £1 million to the theatre and I want it to run in perpetuity, there may be a way of looking at that sort of thing. And obviously, if someone came to us and said, I can make this work, here's the reason why, we're not going to turn them away. We want to understand how this can be delivered. I believe there's a community need, and the community have been supplying theatre, music, watching films, listening to talks. It's all happened there, and it's been part of all of our lives. I don't want to see it fail. This is not permanent. It is reversible. But this is where we find ourselves. We have to make decisions with our head and not just our heart.
I appreciate that. Okay, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for revising your question. Sorry we couldn't make any more out of that. Thank you, Ms. Harris, for your question. This concludes the questions and answer session, just in there, scraped by the skin of our teeth. So therefore, I will now ask members of the public to leave the call and continue watching the public proceedings of the meeting live on the Council's YouTube channel. So I will allow just a couple of moments, just so that we don't lose somebody that should or shouldn't have gone. So if we can check the relevant people have now left, it's for no other reason than our bandwidth here. Okay, I will carry on. Right, item 11, questions from members to the chairman. There are none. Thank you very much for that. So let's get on to item 12, the committee work programme. I would like to know if anybody has anything to raise about that work programme. Would you please indicate in the IM box, or if you can't get to that quickly, just say, yes, Martin, I have a question. I'm just rearranging my screen so I now don't have to look at who's in and out of the meeting, and I can see people who wish to indicate on the IM. So please go to do that if you could do. So there are no people wishing to raise any questions on that. So therefore I move that the committee work programme be noted. I'll take silence as your agreement. Super, thank you very much. Item 13, reports of outside bodies. If you'll look to page 10, a nomination has been received from Councillor Perry to the Upper Medway Internal Drainage Board. Councillor Perry, do you wish to speak at all? We don't have anybody else, but if you wish to speak.
We have a very busy agenda, Chairman, so I think my application says it all. I do have, I live on a floodplain, so I know all about what the Medway Upper Drainage Board does. So.
Well, I also am aware that you've subbed on occasions.
And I have subbed as well, yes.
And I subbed on that, so I have a bit of background as well. I wish you well there. So therefore, Councillor, thank you very much for your words there. I move that Councillor Perry's nomination form be approved. If there is no dissent, I will assume this is agreed. Once again, agreed. Silence is your agreement.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Just before we leave that, I would like to thank Councillor Round for his service during this time as the Council's representative on the Upper Medway Internal Drainage Board, and extend this to Councillor Harper, also our thanks for his ongoing representation on this board. I wish them both well, interesting meetings, and please make sure you don't go giving money away to them. We need it all. So thank you very much. I'll move on to item 14, the second quarter financial update performance. The report will be introduced by Mark Green, Carly Benville and Russell Heppleston. You can find this on pages 11 to 71. So currently we'll start off with Mark Green, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll introduce the first part of the report, which is the financial appendix, and then hand over to Carly and then Russell to introduce sections on performance and risk. So far as the financial performance is concerned, as I'm sure members know, the Council has been affected seriously by COVID-19 over the past year, and page 22 summarises the overall impact, which is over 7 million, which when you consider that the Council's net revenue budget is around 20 million, that's a huge hit to take. Now that loss is mitigated by a number of factors. First of all, we've had some unring-fenced government grants to help us, and then there's also been specific grants to cover things like reopening the high street. So that has helped, and there's also been a number of other mitigations where we've taken steps to mitigate the loss. The biggest single item is around the capital programme, where there's slippage on the capital programme, as you'll see when we get to the capital part of this report. So that's meant that we've saved on borrowing costs, and we've also saved on borrowing costs because interest rates have been lower than anticipated. So there've been mitigations which have offset the overall hit from COVID-19, but we are still faced with a loss for the current financial year. So that's what the first section of the financial report covers. I won't go through the rest in detail, but it covers the capital budget, which, as I say, is showing slippage over the past year, tax collection performance, the movement on our reserves, treasury management, and Maidstone property holdings. And finally, on page 71, there's a list of debts for business rates, which unfortunately we're asking your approval to write off because there's no prospect of recovering those. So as part of the recommendations, you're asked to agree the write-off of those debts. So I'm happy to take any questions on the financial report, but maybe it's easiest if we presenters go through all the different parts of the report and then take all questions together.
Okay, if that's how you'd like to approach it.
I'll hand over to...
Hold that thought.
Yeah, so I'll hand over. So I'll hand over to Carly Benville then to introduce the section on performance.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Chairman and members. So as you will see from Appendix 2 of the report, 2 of the 3 indicators for this committee did not reach target in the second quarter of the year, missing them within 10%. The figure of 57.48% of successful relief duty outcomes is an improvement on the figure achieved in quarter 1, and also an improvement on the results from the same quarter last year. So whilst it has missed its target again, performance does continue to improve. And when we compare this with the latest national figures, we're still achieving nearly 20% above the national outcome for successful relief duty. The second indicator to miss its target is the percentage of land that is assessed as having acceptable levels of litter. This indicator usually achieves a high standard of performance, but this quarter's outcome was affected by just 4 roads that missed the standard when the survey was undertaken. These roads were completely cleansed 3 days later. It should also be noted that good performance can be seen in the indicator for prevention of successful prevention duty outcomes, where the Housing Options team have achieved a successful outcome in 3 out of 4 cases dealt with in quarter 2. Across the 4 committees, only 3 targets missed their indicators by more than 10%. These targets all fall under the priority of a thriving place. However, all 3 of these targets being missed are a direct result of the coronavirus pandemic and the national restrictions that have been imposed. So under the current pressures that we face, to achieve only 3 red targets out of 30 is a great reflection on the hard work that teams have put in during these hard times. So again, I'm happy to take questions, but if we wanted to wait till the end.
Okay, on to Russell Heppelston then for the last section.
Good evening, members. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mark and Carly. In June 2020, when we last reported the corporate risk update, the committee quite rightly requested to keep a closer eye on corporate risks and asked that we incorporate this risk register as part of the quarterly performance monitoring. So usually we would bring this report to you as a standalone report every 6 months. The committee should have a great deal of familiarity with the report, as we have reported the risk register in this format for quite some time. So I won't go through the report page by page, but I'll just cover some of the headlines. By way of context, the Council has a fully embedded risk management framework and policy, and that framework allows us to capture, evaluate and respond to risks at the operational level, within our projects, and also at the corporate level. The corporate risks by definition are of higher impact, and they are directly aligned to our corporate priorities. As such, we review them much more regularly, and they are owned by the corporate leadership team collectively. In the report, I've highlighted in red any updates that we've made against the risk register since its last update to you in June. Since we last reported, we have kept an eye on future uncertainties, so the risk management process is always future looking. So you will see from the table in the appendix that we now have a couple of new risks on the register. So we now have 11 risks that are top scoring compared to previously in June. Since our last report, we have taken action to implement planned controls. So you'll see an overall reduction in the risk profile for 5 risks. So that's risks which scores have been reduced. And there have been no risks that have been increased. The report does include details of 2 new risks relating to COVID-19, one which focuses on our internal uncertainties around service delivery, and one that's external about assisting the recovery of our local community and businesses. And there's also one new risk around major contract failure. The rationale for these risks and the details are outlined in the risk register itself. Risk management continues to be a live process, and we continue to keep the risk register under review. We can see through the report that managers continue to respond to risks in a positive way. They take action, so you'll see controls being moved from the planned column through into the implemented column. Myself and any of the risk owners here tonight would be more than happy to take any questions. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. At the moment, I only have an indication from Councillor Springett. So if you'd like to go first, and anybody form an orderly queue behind in the IM.
Thank you. It's just a little bit that jumped out at me, actually. Page 31, which is part of the other revenue budget's significant variances. I'm not sure whether it's something that Mr. Green will be actually able to answer, but in the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee and Planning Services, the 4th box down, it says Mid-Kent Planning Support Service. This variance reflects the number of vacancies in the team. It is anticipated these posts will be deleted as part of the savings proposals for next year. I'd just like to know what posts they are and how many posts that is for this variance and what they are, because if they're in planning enforcement, I'm not going to be very happy, because we have understaffed our planning team in general for many years and got ourselves in a right pickle for doing so. We have a planning enforcement team that is really struggling at the moment to do their best, and so I would like to know, I know it's not necessarily part of this report and perhaps someone wants to come back to me later, but I'd quite like to know what these posts are that are proposed to be deleted and who they are. So I don't necessarily need an answer today, but I would like to know at some stage. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Springett, we have Head of Paid Services here. So if I pass this over to Mrs. Broom.
Thank you, Leader. For obvious reasons, I won't be naming individuals in terms of my answer to you this evening. But what I can say is the Mid-Kent Planning Support Service is not the Planning Enforcement Service. It is the support that's provided to validate and log and go through the administrative processes of managing planning applications. That team is also responsible for land charges. The reason that we're able to manage currently with a number of vacancies is that we have been implementing a range of transformation initiatives which have made us more efficient, and we will continue to do that. I hope that's sufficient, and that therefore there won't be the need for any follow-up information to be sent.
No, that is fine. I was just concerned because I know the pickle we got into last time by being understaffed is not a place I wish the council to end up again, and I think others would agree with me on that. So if it is a case of it's more admin related, then I'm a lot happier with that point, but thank you for answering it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just looking at page 34, particularly the leisure centre row. Apologies, I'm not up to speed with this, but could you just talk me through the detail in terms of the contractual position that's indicated? And because obviously that's a very significant sum in that column.
Mr. Green or?
Yes, I'm
Charlie?
happy to take that.
If you prefer, Mark, if that's helpful.
Yes, if you'd like to, William, that's fine.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. Yes, in terms of the leisure centre, the government sort of published guidance that effectively that stated that local authorities would be required to meet, some of the losses incurred by leisure centre operators because of the COVID pandemic. So we were having to go through a sort of month-by-month exercise with the operator to sort of understand their losses, and the council is contractually obliged to meet those. So it's very carefully scrutinised on a month-by-month basis. But again, it's one of the major impacts of the pandemic that we're dealing with at the moment. Does that answer your question, Councillor Bryce?
Thanks so much, William. The contractual obligation is that from the government's instruction, or is that part of a contract that we negotiated?
No, it sort of sits above the contract that we negotiated. So it's a diktat from above, from central government, specifically to deal with impacts and effects of COVID.
Understood. Thanks, William.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just making a general point, actually. I do find that the whole report put together is very comprehensive, and quite perversely, I find it very reassuring, because somehow, despite the very grim times we're going through, our KPIs are still reasonably, we've been able to achieve something, and it would be so easy to be really grim and downhearted, but I find this perversely upbeat. And in particular, I would like to say how clear the corporate risks are and how vital it's been to see those. Well, Russell, they're not red, dear, they're pale grey, and I'm sure you were trying to catch me out, but no, I can see what you were doing. But it's absolutely vital that we have those risks in there and the way that we're dealing with them. So I found that pretty reassuring. So really, my overall remark is thank you very much for a comprehensive report, and I do find it encouraging in these dark times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before I will come back to Councillor Bryce, she's obviously turned a page or thought of something else. Councillor Bryce.
No, it was just to endorse what Councillor Gooch said, and to thank the officers, especially Mr. Green, for your thoroughness at this difficult time.
Thank you very much. I was going to point out what Carly Benville said, and that is these figures show the hard work from all our staff in these adverse times, and they're looking cautiously at everything they do, as indeed I hope you realise we are. I will say that the corporate risk register update, as a person who sits on audit, I said then, and I'll say it here, every member should read this and see how we monitor, how we look at things coming over the horizon and try to anticipate and plan for things. I can tell you I have been on some webinars right from Scotland right the way down with different district councils, and there are so many so worse off than us. It is the prudent advice that we have been listening to as we've approached this stage, and I believe this is only the start of these harder times, but I want to look in a positive way as we can. But I heard that today come from politics programme. This is the start of the hardship. You look at the money as a country we have borrowed. We have to be prudent with everything we do. But please pass on your thanks, Mr. Green, to all of your team, Carly and Russell, etc.
Will do.
Okay, nobody else has indicated. So we have on page 12, there are recommendations, but there is one vote. Actually, I will just point out, seeing as we have people who it may be of interest to, on page 71, you see the business rate write-offs. Now, this means that these businesses are apparently not in existence or able to pay their business rates. This sum comes to nearly £70,000. And I want to make very clear that business rates do not come wholeheartedly to us. We are given an amount to collect them, but we have to give them to central government, and they then deem it necessary when possible, and when they, with spending plans and things that they hold on for Christmas from us. But on page 71, we have to actually vote for writing these off. I believe that's the correct way of looking at it. So items 1 to 4 are for noting. I'm happy to propose that we write off these sums of money on page 71.
I'll second, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gooch. That's seconded. So therefore, I will ask in this case, because I think it's a significant amount of money, the clerk will now go through the lists of members as promptly as possible and ask them for their vote for, against or abstain to confirm our proposal on item 5, which is to write off the £69,381 and a penny. So over to you, please, Ms. Parfitt.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bryce.
Abstain.
Councillor Chapeltay.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Gooch.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Joy.
For.
Councillor Mackay.
For.
Councillor Mortimer.
For.
Councillor Newton.
For.
Councillor Perry.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
Against.
Councillor Round.
For.
Councillor Springett.
For.
Councillor de Wigendine Shepherd.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. That was 13 for, 1 against, 1 abstention. That is carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And thank you, everybody, for being nice and prompt on the buttons. I therefore move to item 15, the strategic plan review update and medium-term financial strategy. You'll find this starting on page 72 and continuing on to 137. This will be presented by Mark Green and Alison Broom.
Thank you, Leader. I'll be kicking off on this occasion. Good evening to members. Really, my contribution here is to provide some of the context for the medium-term financial strategy. And so I'm sure many of you will recall our annual review process for the strategic plan commenced in July of this year, when you agreed the structure and the timetable for that review. It has been agreed that the vision and the priorities set out in our existing strategic plan are clear and remain relevant. However, the priorities and the pace at which actions to achieve delivery of the plan and how fast we can implement that have been impacted, as we've heard many times this evening already, by the COVID-19 health emergency. And this will continue to be the case for the foreseeable future. There have been adverse impacts for people and businesses to which the Council has responded with timely, practical and financial support. And there have also been adverse consequences to the Council's own financial position. There have been some positive impacts, for example, in the acceleration of changes in the ways of working and in central government policy development and funding, for example, with respect to rough sleepers. Appendix A summarises progress that we have made against the decisions concerning the strategic plan that were made by the Policy and Resources Committee in September. I won't go through each element, although of course I'd be happy to take any questions and to answer those, but I just would like to highlight one particular element, and that is the 5 proposed areas of focus for future service development and efficiency improvements for planning and economic development. These are set out in the appendix at page 81. We are at a formative stage in this piece of work, and that means that it's more straightforward should you wish to give feedback for us to be flexible in responding to that. And since the report was written, I have already had some feedback from a couple of members. As I say, happy to take feedback either this evening or after the meeting. And the next steps for that particular element of the work will be to have further dialogue with the key members, that those being the leader of the council, the leader of the Conservative group and the chairs of the SPI committee and the planning committee. And then we will work with those members to finalise the scope of the work ahead. So I'll leave it there and hand over to Mr. Green.
Thank you very much. Apologies. I understand that when I spoke earlier, because the signal was poor, I didn't come across very clearly. So hopefully I'm a bit clearer now. The part of this report that I wanted to cover was the draft medium-term financial strategy. And at the same time as this committee looked at the strategic plan back in July, it also set the scene for the medium-term financial strategy. And we knew then that COVID-19 would have a big impact on the council's finances. So it was up there that we would both look at our strategic objectives in the way that the Chief Executive has just described. And we'd also look for a transformational approach to budget savings, leaving no stone unturned in the quest for ways of operating more efficiently. And that basic approach remains the same and is reflected in the draft medium-term financial strategy, which you've got here, which starts on page 84. I won't go through it in detail, but the key assumptions in here are first of all about council tax, because that's our single biggest source of revenue, and the assumption is that council tax will be increased by 2% next year, and this is important because it's a big contributor towards plugging the budget gap. And of course those who struggle to pay council tax, and unfortunately we're seeing more people struggling, do have the opportunity to apply for council tax support. The other key assumptions are about business rates, and the assumption was that the government would allow us to retain broadly the same proportion of business rates as we have done this year. And so far as all of our other sources of income are concerned, and we rely heavily on these, planning fees, parking income, a whole range of different things, we assumed that there'd be a gradual recovery from the impact of COVID-19. And I'm pleased to say that you've probably heard the Chancellor's spending review today. His assumptions have been basically supported by what he said, because he confirmed that local authorities would have the flexibility to increase council tax by 2%. upper tier authorities can also increase council tax by 3% for social care. So we may see KCC doing that, but so far as we're concerned, we've got the 2% referendum limit that we were expecting. The Chancellor also confirmed that the existing financial settlement would be rolled forward for 1 year, so we can expect broadly the same amount of business rates income that we would have got this year if it hadn't been for COVID-19. Now, there's a lot of further detail which will come out in the local government finance settlement, which is due in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that means that the figures in here will change so far as the detail is concerned, but the broad picture is going to be as presented here. So we are faced with a substantial budget gap that we will need to meet next year. So the recommendation here is that you endorse the medium-term financial strategy as it's set out here, and you agree the council tax setting principle of going up to the referendum limit of 2%. Just one other thing to mention is that at the same time as we draw up the medium-term financial strategy, we consult residents on what they're looking for from the budget, and attached to the report on page 113 is the results of our survey of residents. And there's some quite positive things coming out of this, actually. It's good to see that more people feel positive about being proud of the borough, fewer are dissatisfied with it as a place to live. The overall findings about people's views as to whether the council provides value for money are pretty much the same as in previous years, so no big change there. And I suppose the main thing that I suggest members take away from the survey is about what residents see as the priorities and the things that they most value: waste collection, parks and open spaces. So those are the areas that, whatever happens, we're aiming to protect as we develop detailed budget savings proposals. So I'll leave it at that for now, but happy to take any questions that members may have on the detail of the MTFS. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I have now got people starting to indicate. I will go to Councillor Perry first, followed by Councillor Springett.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. It's a very comprehensive paper, if I may say so, and a lot of work has clearly gone into it. So very well done on that. I just got a couple of questions. On page 75, you talk about using the new homes bonus hitherto earmarked for other purposes, and you're going to use that, or you're assuming to use that to meet the budget deficit. Could you tell me what, and this would normally be a reserve, wouldn't it? Would it normally go into some form of capital reserves? And I was just curious to know what the earmark for other purposes are, because clearly something has to give. The other question I've got is actually on page 94, and it's one that always strikes me. I was looking at your balance sheet for Maidstone Borough Council, and the 31st of March 20, and it's a very peculiar ratio, isn't it, between current assets and current liabilities. It's normally the reverse of what I would expect. I would just like to know what's behind that as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Perry. First of all, about new homes bonus, because we're expecting a budget gap of over £2 million next year, it would be unrealistic to expect that to be closed all in 1 year without a major shock to the organisation. So when we've been talking about transformation savings, reprioritisation of the budget, we're not looking to implement all of those things in 1 year. So that means that we are going to have to find other ways of balancing the budget for next year. And normally we wouldn't want to do this, but it is an exceptional situation. So what the report that comes to members in February on the budget is likely to say is that to plug the gap on a temporary basis, to start off with, we'll use New Homes Bonus, which in Maidstone Council, not in other councils necessarily, but in Maidstone Council, we've traditionally used that for capital spending. We've put it in a capital reserve, as you've suggested, and we've used it for capital spending. So what that means in practice is that we'll have to borrow more for our capital programme, which will cost us, but with the cost of borrowing at the moment so low, it's not a big hit, and we'll use New Homes Bonus to plug the gap. And the other earmarked reserve that we may potentially use is the one that we set aside from our membership of the Kent Business Rates Pool, where we've traditionally used this to fund economic development work. Now, obviously, that's very beneficial and has paid dividends for us in the past, but if we're forced to, then we'll use that money not for economic development, but to plug the budget gap. So that's what's meant by using reserves in the short term. And turning to your other question about current liabilities, yeah, you're right that we've got substantial current liabilities. A lot of that, though, is money that we collect from other councils as part of our role as administrators of the Kent Business Rates Pool, but which we then pass on to central government. So it's a timing thing, and it's not. You shouldn't worry that the council has an excessive level of liabilities. I mean, the overall position, as you can see, is that our net assets improved slightly between 2019 and 2020 from 15.6 million to 17.2 million.
Thank you, Mark. I should have spotted that one. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, I see it now. Yeah. Can I just quickly back on the reserves? Presumably at some point we'd want to replenish those reserves, wouldn't we? Or maybe increase the baseline reserves.
That is shown, isn't it?
Yes, that's absolutely the intention. After in the projections, what we're anticipating is that we start putting money back into reserves after year 3. So that's the plan.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to Councillor Springett, could I remind any visiting members, could they please indicate, I'm afraid I forgot to ask at the beginning, they should have gone in first. I don't think anybody indicated that they wish to speak to this item. So back to Councillor Springett, but please indicate in the IM messaging if you wish to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Actually, Councillor Perry stole my first question. It was to say what was the New Homes Bonus normally earmarked for. So now that's been answered. Thank you. Could I just have a reassurance that we're definitely only looking at doing that for this year, and it's not going to just sort of slide off into the distance for future years, so that is a once a lifetime, not once in a lifetime, but just for this year's budget that we're looking at using that New Homes Bonus in a different way. So that's my first point. I'm sure we will, but I just like that reassurance. And the second one is with Alison Broom's comments on page 81 with the 5 proposed areas of focus for future service. Little bit concerned about B on the planning side, where local plan goes to a corporate project. Not too sure about that. So my question is, how are these areas of focus being taken forward? Are we going to have reports brought to individual committees so that they're going to be discussed? Because I'm hoping it's just not going to be done. I would like the opportunity for that to be reviewed a little bit more by members. Thank you.
Should I deal with the question about New Homes Bonus first?
Yeah, and then back to Mrs. Broom.
Yes. Well, with New Homes Bonus, the likelihood is that New Homes Bonus will only exist for another year. The Chancellor, another thing that he said in his statement today was that he confirmed that New Homes Bonus would be paid next year, but it looks as though it'll disappear after that. So in practice, we will only be able to use New Homes Bonus for a year in the way that's envisaged in this report. And maybe if I hand over now to Alison to deal with the other part of your question.
Mr. Green. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the feedback. So as I said in my introduction, we are at a very formative stage. So I'm more than happy to take detailed feedback from you, Councillor Springett. Maybe we could have a one-to-one conversation. And yes, as we go through the process, then I would want to secure a political decision as to the scope before we do a lot of detailed work. On the specific item that you have drawn attention to, we are also very conscious of the critical piece of work being carried out by spatial planning in particular around the local plan review. So we have time to develop the ideas about what we want to explore going forward. And we wouldn't be looking to implement anything significant in a way that would disrupt that particular piece of work. If you have ideas about alternative models that you would like us to explore as part of this piece of work, then we'd be only too pleased to hear about them.
Thank you. That's reassuring. To be fair, I only had a chance to read the agenda today because I've been in the inquiry for the land west of Church Road, Otham, so I haven't had time to think about it more. But I would like to have a little think about it, please. Thank you.
There you are, Councillor Springett. A offer of a one-to-one there with our Chief Exec to go over that. You're going to have brilliant. Okay, I see that Councillor Pearl has been thrown out unintentionally. Can either Julie or Olivia please see if you can rescue him? I don't have anybody else indicating at this point. I would just like to thank Mr. Green. I do have a question. I wonder if we've spoken about the increase of 2% in the council tax. Could you just give me sort of round thousands as to how much that 2% increase brought in to our coffers this year or is projected to for next year, just in round thousands?
Yes, a 1% increase in council tax is worth about 160,000. So 2% would be 320,000. Right.
Okay. Because obviously when you look at this and when you certainly hear about the sums that you said, council tax is very important to us, and the 2% is important. It is, but it's not a massive amount of money to then start to decide what you're going to do with, especially as we look to try and provide the services to everybody that we can and not try and cut key services. So thank you. That's good thing to have in anybody's back pocket when they're talking to members of the public about the council tax increase and what that involves. Right, okay, in which case we have the following recommendations on page 72. I am happy to propose, as on the papers in front of us, items 1, 2 and 3. That was Councillor Gooch, I think.
Yes,
happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to second those. I'm happy to take them all together unless I hear anybody at this point object. Okay, I don't hear anybody objecting, so in which case they've been proposed and second. Does anybody object? I will take your silence as approval unless I hear an objection. Thank you very much. That is approved then. We can move on. And I now intend to go to the Hazlitt Theatre call-in, agenda item 19. So At this point, does anybody wish, we are just coming up to 8 o'clock. Does anybody wish to have a 5-minute, and I mean 5 minutes, before we go into this item?
It would be helpful because I've been thrown out and I can't get back in, and I've
Okay.
rejoined by phone.
In which case, I will we'll go with 8:05. I'm sorry for members of the public, but as you are still sitting at home, so are we, and it is convenient. So please, I will adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. We come back, please, at 8:05. Thank you. that slight comfort break. As I say, we've been going for an hour and a half. Thank you very much for everybody's attention and participation. Item 19 will be taken now. It's the call-in of Economic Regeneration and Leisure's decision of the Hazlitt Theatre options. Rule 33.4, Part 3.1 is the one has governed us and brought us to this position. We can see the items that we should be taking into consideration on our papers at page 279 and 285 to 285. So therefore, what I would like to do is ask those members who are here that were signatories on the call-in, would you like to speak first, please, and give your views at this point?
Hello there.
I was going to say, I am indicating, Martin.
Sorry, thank you. Right, well, yes, yeah, okay. Councillor Pearl then first. I'm expecting, as I say, I will now invite the following members to address the committee in no particular order. Councillors Bryce, Hastie, Kimments, Parfitt-Reid, Powell and Pearl to outline their reasons for referring the ERL decision to committee. Councillor Pearl, please proceed.
You'll be disappointed to know I can't get my camera working now.
That's quite all right. We can hear you.
Oh. Chairman, these committee resolutions that we've called in are wrong for two fundamental reasons. Firstly, they're seriously damaging. They seriously damage, if not potentially destroy, the ability to deliver theatre in Maidstone. And secondly, they're premature. They damage the theatre because they do away with all the theatre staff and all their know-how and all the systems and procedures they have around them, whether that's sort of the health and safety procedure or the booking system or whatever. They do this, notwithstanding the rider in the fourth resolution, because they do three things. They declare the budget to be unsustainable with no caveat. They slash the budget to the cost of just mothballing the building, and they terminate the existing operator. Now, if you mix the operator's termination with the slash budget, that doesn't provide for any theatre staff. That means you're dispensing with all the theatre workers and all their know-how. Now, every councillor I have spoken with tells me, nearly every councillor I've spoken with tells me that they want to see the Hazlitt alive and thriving when the pandemic is over. But how do you do that with no budget and no staff? Nearly every councillor I speak with says they want a Christmas panto at the Hazlitt. I know that Councillor Harper, and I believe he's sincere, has a variety of ideas around bringing life back to the theatre, albeit one day. But how do you do that with no budget and no staff? And I read this evening, and indeed, we heard from yourself, sir, that the council actually now intends to put the contract out for tender again. But how will we get any other operator to run a small theatre like this with no budget and no staff? And let's be clear, if we fire all the existing team, any new operator will have to build a new team from scratch. In any commercial setting, firing an entire team is dangerously easy, but building a decent replacement team is incredibly difficult and very expensive. When the current operators took over, they inherited the existing staff, or what were then the existing staff from NBC. When Bromley Council changed operators at the Churchill a couple of years back, the staff and indeed the wider systems and operating procedures all remained in place. My beloved Liberal Democrat predecessor, Councillor David Pickett, wrote to me last week, and he said, and I quote, "We must ensure that we keep a core of the present management, which will be vital for a recovery post-pandemic," unquote. These resolutions that we've called in do none of that. They remove the budget and all the theatre workers, and they replace them, and I'm sorry to say, with little more than good intentions. But as I say, these resolutions are also, in my view, premature. We know that there is still money in things like the Cultural Recovery Fund, and that efforts from Parkwood and Helen Grant to obtain some of that haven't been allowed to play out yet. We can see that the original decision was taken on the basis that it was all fairly urgent because the furlough scheme for the theatre staff was going to come to an end this month. we know now that's changed. Since the original paper was written, we've had not one but 3 vaccines announced. We're told that the new tiered-based restrictions, which include those applying to theatres, will be redundant by the end of March. Now, I admit to being a little sceptical about that, but why just assume it will take far, far longer? Why not leave it until, leave it a month or so to when things might be much clearer? Perhaps more importantly, though, Chairman, the reason I believe that this decision is premature is because nearly every councillor I speak with about this has an idea of their own on how the Hazlet could be run in the future. We'll probably hear some more of them tonight, but they include things like sources of funding, commercial tricks being missed, greater community involvement, greater third sector involvement, renegotiating the current contract, scrapping the current contract and forming a charitable trust instead, a form of merger with the museum, all the way through to my favourite, although it's possibly unfeasible, of using the capital budget to build a new, larger theatre. None of these ideas have really been heard out in arriving at these Earl resolutions. And if you take away the budget and fire all the staff now, as per the original resolutions, then you do rather prejudice most of these ideas. They'd all start from no budget and no staff. Now, to this end, Chairman, so that it's on the table, I should move that that the 4 resolutions of the Earl Committee on 12th of November 2020 concerning the Hazlet be substituted with a resolution that the matter be deferred until the Earl Committee meets on 19th of January 2021, so as to allow greater clarity on issues such as external sources of funding and COVID-related developments, and to facilitate further member and stakeholder engagement in determining the best method of retaining the Hazlet for years to come. Now, I've popped that on the instant messenger, and if I might have a seconder.
Can I just ask first, before you try and obtain the seconder, can I ask Ms Parfitt to clarify that I was asking for them to set out their reasons for the call-in, and then we would hear from the officer and the other people wishing to speak to this first, before anything like that came forward. Can I just have a procedural check on that, please?
Yes, Chairman, that was how the procedure was to be facilitated.
On a point of order, Chairman, there's no rule preventing me making the proposal now.
But are you not one of the people who called it in?
I am, and I'm also a member of the committee for today's purposes.
Okay, it's shutting everything down, Councillor Pearl. Really? Just saying, this is what I want to have on. And
there can be a long conversation. That there can be back and forth, but it saves me having to come back.
So you're not going to come back at any point further?
I may well do, but
there you are,
if you want me to wrap up or something on a motion or something, but this allows what I'm proposing to be on the table for people to argue about and swear at me over.
Can we not do that as part of the committee later?
That's exactly what I would have.
In which case, I'd have to.
Because you've called it into policy and resources, and you're the person who is actually you're at both ends of the telescope, really, and I don't really see that's very beneficial. Certainly, it sort of precludes everybody, because I'm going to go to then the speakers who wish to address this from the public, then to John Foster, and then Councillor Harper. Do you see what I mean? Then the visiting members, and really they're talking to nothing if you propose something and put it in second. It's just going to mean that things will then get amended if someone comes up with a better idea.
Chair, if I can just add, it's the Monitoring Officer, Patricia Narrable, speaking. Hello, good evening, members.
Yes, carry on.
The Chair does have an element of discretion to guide the committee, or at least to rearrange, just to ensure that sufficient debate takes place. So the chair does have a discretion of the chair. So I think the proposal that the chair has made is in order.
Chairman, if I may, you'll see that I've put the little green telephone there so that asking to be the first speaker when this comes back then to full members, and I'll just repeat exactly what I've said.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking that on board, Councillor Pearl. Is anybody else wishing to speak from the members who signed the call-in?
Yes, Chair, I've indicated it, Councillor Bryce.
Thank you very much. Carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I think I just wanted to recognise the overwhelming public concern about this decision. I was an 11-year-old girl who's incredibly shy, would you believe, who stepped onto a theatre stage and and found my voice. And I have worked with children, privileged to work with children, and watch them grow and develop in theatres, and you know, find real meaning in calling. So I think that, you know, Councillor Pearl set it out very eloquently. I endorse many of his points, but I think we ought to recognise and respond to the masses of public concern and petitioning that's you know, gone on. And I share the concerns about, you know, the beating heart of the Hazlitt in Maidstone and the need to do everything we can to preserve that wherever possible.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm now scrolled down. So we are doing what Councillor de Wigendine has said. We're leaving it on the table. Councillor Powell, then, please, as also one of the signatories.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think Councillor Pell, his comments tonight were excellent. In fact, I'm looking forward to hearing them again. But can I just remind all the members that the Hazlitt has now been with us in Maidstone for over 65 years in its current format, offering a variety of music, comedy, adult panto, drama, interviews, dance, youth theatre, film, choir, amateur hires and numerous classes and whatever else you mentioned earlier on, Mr. Chairman. And I know this council made a decision which I believed was extremely hasty kind of last week to remove the support that MBC have traditionally given. I mean, I understand the reasoning behind this, given the financial pressures which are upon us at this, you know, horrible time. Can I say the cutbacks is not all about money. Its very existence at the Hazlitt is a lifeline for many. I mean, laughter and cheer appear to be in short supply at the moment, and moving forward, the Hazlitt is one place where it can be found in abundance. And I don't mean the Hazlitt being moved to a leisure centre or whatever else. The Hazlitt is the heart of that Elm Street community. I mean, this blessed COVID is awful. Please, committee, don't make it worse. On a monetary side, by removing the subsidy, 40 people's jobs, as we've heard here tonight, will be on the line. The local economy will be hit by 5 million. Elm Street in general will suffer more losses. I mean, there's pubs, there's restaurants, there's all sorts of things down there. That £5 million that could be spent in there, you know, in pints of beer and pizzas and whatever else, that's going to hurt. That could be the tipping balance. So it will end up with more redundancies, more people queuing up at the local job centre. In fact, it would just devastate it. Entertainment is good for mental health. You know, would we support a policy that reduces a reduction in funds to social services? Sounds stupid, doesn't it? Of course we wouldn't. But I'm looking at an old biblical quote where it states that a joyful heart is good medicine. Mr. Chairman and members, can I ask that when you vote this evening, you give the 7,000 plus signatories on the Save the Hazlitt petition a joyful heart by agreeing to overturn the decision of the ERL, or at the very least explore the alternatives, which includes the government support funding, the part that hasn't been explored and that was mentioned by Helen Grant. Many thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. From the signatories, I have Ashley Kimmants, but first I have Councillor Parfitt Reid, Councillor Chapeltay, I won't be coming to you at this point, so you weren't on the signatories, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Thank you. If you just hold back then, please. Councillor Parfitt-Reid, followed by Councillor Kimantz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just keep it very, very brief because everything that I would have said or could have said has already really been said. I just felt, from a personal point of view, the decision was just somewhat premature. Decisions were made before the committee was aware of where things were going into the future, and by that the extension of furlough and that kind of thing. So I really feel it should have just been just at least, I know it's an awful expression, but slightly kicked into the long grass further down when we could perhaps look at things slightly more objectively. I think really what we're trying to do, what we're saying here is that the Hazlitt Theatre is invaluable, and what we're trying to do is put a price on something that is invaluable, and I'm not sure that that can be done. So I think we should do everything we can to try and I just think we should do everything we can and explore every option. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, from the signatories, Councillor Kimantz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Powell missed one thing off of his list, and that was politics, because Tony Benn was there with his flask and stuff. My main point is I used to take my mum there to the Hazlitt Theatre every single year to the Maidstone Operatic Society, and we used to love it, and I've carried on going since she passed away 4 years ago. The Hazlitt Theatre was so accommodating for her because she was in a wheelchair. Loved the place. My granddaughters used to go with Harmony. John Kingdon used to run that, and his idea was acting was for everybody. You know, it doesn't matter if you have special needs. You can be on that stage. So I was sort of worried when I thought that it was going to be closed. But tonight we've had so many good speakers from the members of the public that have asked the questions that they've answered everything that I need to know, and I do feel reassured that this committee are going to come to the best decision. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kimantz. So now I will turn to the 7 members of the public who've been waiting very patiently to give us their views, please. So I will just check I've done the right thing. Yep, it's just to remind you that there are 3 minutes per speaker. However, the overall time permitted is 12 minutes. Well, I really do want to hear, so please keep it concise. And they will just be simply statements. They will not get any answers. So with the best will in the world, and I will make sure we give every opportunity that we can. Please keep it as concise as you can. Let's try and get all of you in under 12 minutes. I'll turn to Mr. Keith Nicholson first. Mr. Nicholson? No, okay. Not here. We'll try and go back if we can. Miss Kate Penn.
Hello there.
Hello, please fire away.
Hello there, thank you. I'm Katie Penn and I'm an actor in training, and I'm here to express on behalf of all the young performers how the Hazlitt Theatre is important for young people growing within the theatre, TV and film industry. I grew up in Maidstone performing with Prima Stage School from the age of 4 to 18, and I performed alongside Blue Genie / New World Productions for the Christmas pantomimes during the years 2008 and 2013. The Hazlitt was the most important foot pedal into my career today as I continue to study acting at university. For young people like how I was, this theatre was the rock to becoming who I am as a performer. It gave me the confidence and experience of performing on stage to live audiences. I made friendships for life. I met like-minded people, and I learned the importance of everyone's roles within the theatre, appreciating everyone's work. It's a huge hub for young performers and people in production to grow into their future industry. By performing on a theatre in front of live audiences, it will allow them to grow in confidence and various skills. So stage schools, the Hazlitt Youth Theatre, the Hazlitt Dance Company, all need the Hazlitt Theatre for young people. The stage is a main part of this industry. It's what everyone gets excited about, the lights, the audience, the atmosphere. You can't just experience that in a hall, and it needs to be properly run like how Parkwood have been doing. And even though I'm speaking as a performer, there's a huge amount of work that goes beyond that with Parkwood running it. You have all the production and tech teams that are involved in all the preparation and running of performances. There are so many people within this line that use the Hazlitt to expand their network and start within our industry. And I'm sure everyone here has watched TV shows or any kind of films made between the 1920s to today. And the large majority of those actors and production teams start out in theatre, and mostly their local theatre. So supporting the Hazlitt and supporting Parkwood, who knows how to run it, supports the growth of new future talent within this amazing sector for your entertainment. And an efficient theatre means everything for us. Otherwise, you'll be writing off an entire sector of future workers. And this could be your children, this could be your grandchildren. The Hazlitt is where they came from, it's where they started. And yes, I understand we've been in a pandemic and not a lot has been able to happen for anyone because the government told us to close, but that isn't anyone's fault, that isn't Parkwood's fault, and we want it to be up and running with them as soon as we can. So thank you for listening, and I hope we can make the best decision for everyone like me out there, for all the young performers, for all the older performers, everyone in production and techies, because there is a lot of us out there, and this theatre is our life, and we want the doors open as soon as possible and running efficiently.
Thank you very much, Katie, for your passion. Over to Michelle Cleverly, please.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, please, far away.
Thank you. So the Hazlitt Theatre has been a really important part of my life for the past 20 years. I started as a member of the Hazlitt Youth Theatre in my early teens. The Hazlitt gave me a job as a front of house steward, and it's where I met my husband, Martin Cleverly, who's worked at the Hazlitt for the last 20 years and is currently the general manager under Parkwood. But just to be really clear, I'm not here for him, I'm here for me, and I'm here for the thousands of other people that want to see a thriving Hazlitt Theatre reopen in Maidstone. The first thing I was going to talk about is the practicalities of reopening the Hazlitt and the impact it will have on the local economy. But that's been covered in some depth tonight, and I'm in no doubt that you will understand the importance that the Hazlitt plays in regenerating the local economy when a vaccine is available. So I'll just focus on this point, that the speed at which the Hazlitt can reopen is going to have a significant impact. There's currently a full programme of shows for 2021 planned. Those shows have been planned for over a year. Some big names in comedy, in singing, the winner of this year's Britain's Got Talent, some big family shows. They're all there, they're all ready to go. And the last thing I'm sure any of us want is for the Hazlitt to not be open quickly when the rest of the country is back into recovery and opening their doors. We don't want it to lose any more businesses on Earl Street, which is a thriving, exciting place to be, or was pre-COVID. Plus, if you want any chance of having a pantomime in 2021, the team, or there will need to be a team working on that from the start of the year, really. And nobody wants to rob the town of Maidstone of another pantomime for another year. That would be a very sorry state to be in. And just to talk a little bit from my heart, the Hazlitt Theatre, as I've said, means a lot to me. It's got an atmosphere all of its own. It's a truly unique place. Some people describe it as a really intimate atmosphere. Some people describe it as a really in-your-face experience. Other people describe it as a really feisty experience. But however you describe it and however you've experienced it, it's an atmosphere that you won't recreate or replicate anywhere else. And you turn off the lights and you turn away the people, and you do it for too long a period, and you'll take away the heart and the soul of that place, and that will be a really difficult thing to recover.
Thank you.
So I just want to ask the committee really to not shoot yourself in the foot. Work together, work with your partners, work with your stakeholders, work with your local community, councillors, MPs, Parkwood Theatre, and do it in a really meaningful way. Have the discussions that you haven't yet had. If you're in support of supporting the leisure centre, why not continue to explore avenues with the theatre? Look at the cultural recovery funding. Can we challenge that as a collective? If 2020 has taught us anything, it's surely that working together to look after what matters to people is the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I've asked at the beginning, please try and go less than 3 minutes, because I have 4 more people and only 6 more minutes left. Jacob Amos, Mr. Jacob Amos.
Council, can you hear me okay?
Yes, far away.
Whilst I could take this opportunity to beg for the reversal of the councillor's decisions from last Thursday, I'd rather take this opportunity to express what a successful theatre is. Success is recommencing operations at the Hazlitt Theatre on the earliest possible opportunity in August, in line with the law, providing a broad programme of activities which have been sold out up until their unfortunate closure by the second lockdown. Success is being ready to welcome the hundreds of Hazlitt Youth Theatre members merely days away from restarting the autumn term, having had their hobby, passion, and for many their reason to exist snatched away from them in March this year. Success is providing a safe space for young people to socialise, express themselves, and to feel valued. Success is providing a home which opens its doors and welcomes frequently returning users with open arms, providing a platform for them to perform. Success is the rapturous applause that users such as the Wellington Players or the Stage Theatre Society receive on their opening night of their performance. It is also the hundreds of beaming smiles on the faces of young scouts who have just performed in their first ever Maidstone Gang Show. Success is providing a platform for people to reconnect and socialise who may ordinarily feel confined to their own room or home, by providing Dancing for Fun weekly classes for older members of the theatre's visitors. Success is providing facility for yoga classes to be taught weekly in the Hazlitt complex. Success is providing a highly beneficial apprenticeship programme across multiple departments of the building, producing extremely experienced and professional theatre workers. Success is providing young people their first job as a steward or bartender as a gateway to employment in difficult times. Success will be continuing the Parkwood Theatre's work started in 2013 when called upon by Maidstone Borough Council themselves to turn the Hazlitt Theatre around. Success is so much more than bums on seats and figures. Please consider what Parkwood have done for the Hazlitt Theatre and Maidstone, the £5 million adds to the local economy under their management, the lives it affects day in and day out that extends from simply a theatre auditorium and a sold-out show. Parkwood have turned the Hazlitt Theatre around since inheriting it from NBC in 2013. If councillors truly wish to see the theatre thrive, they must consider the overwhelming success Parkwood have had and know that they have so much more to potential over the next 8 years of their management. COVID-19 has brought a financial burden which is only short term. The Hazlitt and Parkwood's management has the potential to be successful for many more years to come. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. I repeat again, if you can keep it less than 3 minutes, that would be marvellous. I would love to hear from everybody, please. Darren Clark.
Hello, thank you. So this meeting has been very revealing, so I've had to change what I was going to say on the fly. Since the decision was made public, it was said by Councillor Paul Harper in the media that all options, including taking back the theatre under council control, were being considered. And now Respectful Chairman has said today that it is the council's intention to tender it to another operator. I hope you can understand the frustration the public are feeling in trying to understand what is going on when the council is being inconsistent in its response. I'm afraid this makes it very difficult for us as public to prepare effectively to speak on behalf of the Hazlitt Theatre when at no point was there public consultation about this very public building. We've not been made aware of the economic cost to the council of a retender, nor have we been made aware of how the council intends to handle the substantial skill vacuum that Councillor Pearl mentioned that will be left if Parkwood staff are made redundant. In this difficult time, And even in the recovery from COVID, who are you going to find to tender? Have you thought about that? The arts is on its knees across the country. It is very likely that many of the big operators will not be interested. And then what will happen? Have they been consulted? Has this even been considered? I mean this respectfully and passionately because I am an artist myself and I believe in the power of the arts. So before any decision is made, I would just implore you all, please engage in meaningful consultation with the public, with the numerous companies, the organizations and the people who use the Hazlitt. Please don't shut us out. We are experts in our field. We can help you. We can help you do this right. It's not about the money. It is partly about the money, not all about the money. It's a home, it's a hub, a community. This budget, the budget for the Hazlitt is not measured in pounds. It's measured in the confidence of its members, the lifelong friendships, the depth of meaning it adds to its community. Chairman Cox, you said earlier that we must use our heads, not just our hearts in this matter. One of the things that the theatre does is bring those two together. So I ask you all to give both of those things weight when making this decision. This will be your legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Simon Diper. No, in which case I've gone to Scott Raffle, please.
Good evening, Martin. Councillor Cox, can you hear me?
Yes, carry on.
Okay, I come to you this evening, ladies and gentlemen, as chairman of the Wellington Players, who have been performing at the Hazlitt since the 1950s, and as also secretary to the Hazlitt Theatre Users Association, of which we have about a dozen members mixing drama, dance, musical shows, musical theatre, choirs, and so on. The community groups currently make up 33% of the programme at the Hazlitt. This not only engenders a community spirit, bringing us all together, it also contributes significantly to the learning and development of hundreds of school-aged children in our community and other young people, giving them the confidence to perform in front of live audiences. Now, we feel in the Hazlitt Theatre Users that it's essential that in future the Hazlitt is run on a professional basis as it is currently run. In the past, back in the 1960s and 1970s, it wasn't done in this way, and it was run purely for community groups. And this didn't work well because at that time it left the theatre line empty for weeks on end and didn't make the most of the opportunity of the theatre. So we implore the Mason Borough Council to maintain a professional management of this theatre, and when it is ready to reopen, it must be ready and in place. All of the amateur groups benefit from the professional shows that are on at the theatre that fill up this other 66% of the time, but the professional shows also benefit from the amateurs. And in addition to that, all of the nighttime community on Earl Street benefits from us all, given that they regularly liaise with the theatre over theatre ticket numbers and ticket sales so they can actually arrange their staffing accordingly. The pantomime in December makes a huge point about this as well. It's essential that the theatre is ready to open again when we get together. So just to summarise, at a time when all communities need to pull together to get through COVID, the last thing we need is to lose the facilities at the Hazlitt, which must be ready and able to recreate a community spirit when the pandemic is over. Losing such a facility would not only heighten our problems when the community is ready to gather together, but it could potentially run the risk of losing the theatre forever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We have obviously overrun on our timing. That was 14, nearly 15 minutes. But I hope the committee will realise that I really do not want to stifle anybody's comment or anybody's input this evening. So thank you very much for the indulgence of letting that overrun. Okay, I would now like to hear the report introduced to our committee. That will be done by John Foster, after which Councillor Harper, Chairman of the Committee Economic Regeneration and Leisure, will also carry on. I don't believe this has any time restrictions on it. So, Mr. Foster, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. As you've just heard, COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on the council's budgets. And in this context, as part of the wider council-led review of priorities and budgets, September's Policy and Resources Committee noted that the subsidy of the Hazlitt was still sizable, and asks the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee to consider the theatre's contribution to the town centre economy, alternative options for sustaining the theatre, or alternative uses of the asset. This report sets out the options for the future of the Hazlitt and the implications and impact COVID restrictions have had on theatre operations. So the Hazlitt Theatre has been a landmark of the town centre for many decades, bringing enjoyment to many generations over the years. And as set out by Councillor Cox in response to an earlier question, in normal circumstances, modelling suggests that the theatre's activities have a positive economic impact of the town and the surrounding area of £5 million per year. However, we are not in normal circumstances. The theatre has been closed to live performances since March. There is no additional expenditure in the local economy from audiences. Casual staff have been made redundant and some of the existing staff furloughed. The contract we have with Parkwood, under that contract, they are obliged to deliver a range of services, including a large number of live productions, an annual pantomime, a community theatre, education vocational classes, to name a few. In return, the council pays a subsidy to Parkwood of around £245,000 per year. At the beginning of the pandemic, the council entered into negotiations with Parkwood that resulted in the council increasing the subsidy it paid to them from the beginning of the lockdown period in March to the end of September. This was agreed at that time in the hope and expectation that the pandemic would not be as long-lasting as it has been. As I said, there have been no live performances at the theatre this year, even though theatres could open from the 15th of August. And after an initial reopening to community dance groups, the second UK lockdown has now forced the venue to close again for at least another month. Parkwood have not been successful in obtaining cultural recovery funding and has subsequently requested a further waiver of their obligations under the contract from November to March 2021. Very little of the services have been delivered during the year. There is still a great deal of uncertainty about when or if these conditions will change in the medium term, despite the apparent positive news on vaccines. And the council is faced with paying Parkwood around £20,000 per month for many more months for little in the way of services. The Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee considered a number of options for the continuation of the contract with Parkwood, which would result in a reduction to the council's monthly subsidy. They included Parkwood remaining in contract with all, most, or a few staff, or effectively a suspension of the contract. None of these options would have delivered a return to live theatre to the main auditorium, and Parkwood have stated that they require the council's full subsidy of £20,000 per month, even though they are unable to deliver the services in the contract. The Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee came to the conclusion that the ongoing effects of COVID-19 have meant that the basic commercial assumptions of the contract with Parkwood are no longer viable, and it was no longer good value for money to continue with the current contract. The decision of Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee was therefore to enter into negotiations with Parkwood to terminate the contract, where possible on mutually agreeable terms, and for the council to take back control of the building and seek short to medium term uses for it. This decision was not made lightly or easily. The council recognises the important contribution the theatre makes to the town centre economy and the quality of life of residents, and the value of arts and culture to our well-being. However, in taking this action, the council will protect the public purse at a very challenging time and ensure that when the conditions are in place to procure a viable and sustainable theatre operator, the building will be available and ready to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Over now to Councillor Paul Harper, Chairman of the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee, for his offering.
Thank you, Martin. I think everybody listening to this and all Maidstone councils will know how passionate I am and always have been for the arts, culture and heritage sectors. Locally, I'm also a companion to the Changeling Theatre and I have wide experience of theatre management. Live theatre and arts helps enrich everyone's lives and the opportunities and experiences which they could not receive otherwise. To be honest, with the committee and those watching it, it breaks my heart to see the arts and our cultural life across our country in these dark times. And then when we had to make the decisions, as John Foster was just saying, at the Earl Committee in November, the Hazlitt Arts Centre and Theatre are at the heart of our artistic and cultural scene in Maidstone, and it will remain Maidstone's main venue for live theatre and other art forms. That is my personal commitment to everybody on this call and listening to it. Getting back to the vision I have as the chair of the Earl Committee responsible for the Hazlitt, is that it's to be a vibrant arts and cultural hub for Maidstone, including a blend of professional and community use in both the Exchange Studio and in the Hazlitt Auditorium. To that end, I agree with the calling that we need to clarify my and Earl's commitment to reopen the Hazlitt when we can. Tonight, a number of amendments will be moved from the chair, and I will just go quickly through them because they help also set the scene for I think, for tonight. So we are going to look into a short term from now until February, when officers will work with the chair and the vice chair of the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee to look at alternatives and interim suggestions. And then for the medium term, a report will come back to the committee in February 2021, scoping the future for arts and cultural services to be provided from the Hazlitt Arts Centre, to include also the criteria and illustrative timetables for reopening the various elements of the Hazlitt Arts Centre, as we've heard, the Exchange, the main auditorium, the fourth wall, and the Maidstone Lounge, taking into account any ongoing COVID restrictions that might apply. Now, I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues on the Earl Committee, councillors and officers, to do what we can to bring back the Arts Centre, Hazlitt Arts Centre, to the community and to the heart of our cultural community. The arts and theatre world, which emerge from the current darkness, will, whatever we want, clearly be different to where they were in 2019. I don't think anybody is expecting the world in 2021 to reflect much of what there was in 2019. We're moving through a paradigm shift in terms of arts and culture, and we need to recognise that. By taking the time to recalibrate and rethink, we can end up with a Hazlitt Arts Centre that everyone can be proud of and that lies at the heart of our cultural and artistic life, continuing to enhance people's lives. In the short term, I think there are opportunities to use the main auditorium, as other venues around the country have been doing, but we haven't in Maidstone. So live streaming of live productions on the internet, either for free or for a fee. There's no reason why that can't be done in the Hazlitt. It's done in lots of theatres. And our museum recently did just that with funding from the Arts Council COVID support. And I'd just now like to say a few points in terms of the response to the actual proposed call-in. And I'll go through point by point. So point one, yes, everyone clearly agrees that the Hazlitt Theatre is our valuable community asset, and that once the pandemic is over, we all want to see it reopen as soon as possible. That goes without saying by everybody. Point two, well, the papers to the committee went out in accordance with the timetable for the dispatch of all papers to all agendas. In fact, we had a briefing for all councillors in October about the Hazlitt, precisely so that the members of the committee would have an understanding of how the Hazlitt Theatre works when they came to the meeting on the 12th of November, a couple of weeks ago. And at that meeting itself, excuse me, I just need to take a glass of water. At that meeting itself, all members of the Earl Committee, which represent all the political parties on Maidstone, had multiple contributions to make to the debate. And as chair, it was only when I had checked that nobody had anything further they wished to add to the report or the debate that we went to a conclusion and then through to voting on recommendations. And I would remind everybody The recommendations were unanimously voted through by the committee. Nobody at any time in that meeting said they required more time for discussion or requested deferment. Everybody implied that and indicated that they had the information they needed. And equally, there were no other suggestions whatsoever being proposed to what the committee agreed. Point 3, I know that we considered and therefore unable to discuss it widely with other councillors. However, as chair, as a number of you on this call will know, I did have considerable discussions with my vice chair, Martin Pound, plus Faye Gooch and Martin Cox as the other group spokespersons on that committee. And it was only after having those discussions that we felt confident we could take the report forward through Earl. Ultimately, it is for the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee members to make their decisions on items within their remit. However, the wider council was aware of the requirement, as John has clearly pointed out, placed on myself and the committee to make considerable savings at both, not only at the Hazlitt Theatre, but at Maidstone Museum, which we have had to do. And point 4, as chair of Earl, I am encouraged by the fact that people are passionate on this issue. I'm passionate on this issue. And I think that's what shows the importance of arts and culture to us all. And in fact, if there hadn't been a Save the Hazlitt campaign, then my personal ambition and passion to reopen the Arts Centre would have fallen on deaf ears tonight. The fact is, people do want to see us reopen it, and we are looking at a way to achieve that. Point 5, which is about involving the community, well, as Economic Regeneration and Leisure will take reports on Hazlitt going forward, I will welcome all residents of Maidstone, if they wish, attending our meetings, either at the Town Hall or on Skype, and asking questions and engaging in the process, which will evolve over the forthcoming period. And just finally, on point 6, the current decisions are completely sound. They do protect the council. They will enable us to bring back the Hazlitt at the earliest opportunity based on sound research and planning. So please, I ask members of Policy and Resources if you will support the decisions from Earl with the amendments which I know your chair tonight is going to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, Mr. Foster and Councillor Paul Harper, for that input. I will be now taking the visiting members. I have seen indication, but I believe I will come back to those people in the order they've indicated, because they're all members of our committee. So I have visiting members. Would they like to indicate, please, if they wish to speak?
Yes, please.
They don't have. You'd like to indicate. Okay, Councillor Nagy, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I said at the beginning of the meeting I'd like to speak. Right. This Hazlitt Theatre is the only theatre we got, and some of the questions have been answered anyway. But I first had dealings with in the 70s with Ron Sparrowhawk, who was the Willington Players. That's my first involvement with the Hazlitt. My daughter was part of the Panto in 80s when she was about 5, you see, and that's how the Hazlitt affects the people of Maidstone, and it's a very important decision. And I think the press releases didn't help. Having one on the 13th saying what it did, and very short one, and then having a really long one on the 16th. I'm surprised the chairman and his committee put that out, because when I was allowed to be on the committee, when I was on Earl, the chairman always agreed a press release with the committee. And I don't know if that happened with this, because even not being on any committees, as a borough councillor, I do get the same reaction as you all get, because people assume that all Maidstone Borough Councils have ideas or are contributing to all the things that go on. And I think it's very important that people on these committees do remember that. And I don't think the Earl had any indication until the papers come out exactly of what was going to happen. Now, there's lots of people saying, oh, we're just getting rid of people, or we're going to get rid of people, so councillors can bring their friends in. That's been mentioned to me quite a lot. But I've assured them that that won't happen in any future process at all. And I think what the council, and one of the things John Foster cleared up is why it's taken 8 months to come to this sort of decision. But obviously he said what with the furlough and things like that, that's been explained. That would have been nice to have been in the public domain, as I don't think that's a secret. And I think we've got to tell the public tonight, not in yellow pages, don't go to another secret bit, is to tell the public one way or another, whatever the amendments are, which have already been preordained by the chairman, Paul Harper, is already saying there's amendments tonight. So whatever they are, but it has to be, as soon as a date can be organised for the Hazlitt to open, it has to be, it'll take so many months to do that, time we get someone in or whatever. I think that's what the public are looking for. Some sort of, I think everyone knows, now they know the facts, realise it probably has to close because it's been so long. There's no likelihood of it opening in the near future, and decisions have had to be made. And as I've said to people, we're not selling the building or anything. We've still got the building. So the Hazlitt will always be there. And it is the hub of the community in the theatre. And we need to make sure that people know we have got their interests at heart. And we will be setting some sort of time schedule in the future when we can open the Hazlitt as soon as we're allowed to. I think everybody realised that. And I think that's what they're looking for Maidstone Borough Council to say. If say in April we're allowed to carry on, it will take 1 month, 2 months before the theatre's up and running. I think that's what people are looking for, a bit more definite as soon as we can, rather than general press releases that don't say much, especially that first one. And I think that's what they're looking for tonight. And I would say to the committee tonight to have a think about that. I don't know what the options are. I won't have any say in it. But to remember that we're all councillors and we all take the decisions and have the same reaction as what you're getting sitting on your committees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, if I go back to the order in which I've been asked to take the visiting members, it was Councillor Hinder, Grigg, Brindle and Kimments, in that order, please. Although Councillor Kimments has spoken, so.
Thank you, Chair. I've put on the IM what I wanted to say. I think everything that Paul has said, I fully support, and I would like to thank him and in particular Martin for all the efforts that have been put on behind the scenes. I also like to thank all the members of the public that have spoken this evening. I think their contributions have been excellent, and they've certainly made me think long and hard about it. I want the Hazlitt to continue, and I'll do everything I can to ensure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hinder, and here. I don't believe Councillor Grigg is in the call unless she's going to pop in as we speak. In which case, Councillor Brindle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't much more to add to all the excellent contributions that have been made this evening. I agree that we should keep at all costs the Hazlitt Theatre, if only for the mental health of adults and the children alike. I think it's most important. As has been stated, it's been part of Maidstone for more years than I've been alive, and I think it's important that it is continued. My other question is, if it is decided to close it, what arrangements have temporarily closed it, I hasten to add. I trust that suitable arrangements have been made to mothball it so that we don't come back and find that we have major repairs that needed to be done before we can set up and have it up and running again. Thank you.
Councillor Brindle, no, what was in item 2 on the recommendations that came from Earl, the 8,630 included maintenance and an element of caretaking and making sure that everything was running as smoothly if that course of action is decided upon. That's where we came up with the amount of money to, in inverted, but mothball it. So that is certainly what was there. Councillor Kimmants, because you were, as a visiting member, I'm going to assume that you've said everything, so I will now go back.
No, Mr. Chairman. There was a few things that I wanted to pick up on what Councillor Harper said. One of the things was I wanted to thank him for agreeing that the call-in was right, which is nice. I've had quite a few emails and also members of the public speak to me on this subject. I think what people are worried about is that the theatre is going to close for good. And what we've got to remember over time, this is not something that's happened just once. I mean, if you go back to Shakespeare's time, the outbreak of the bubonic plague, they had to shut the theatre, and then also when the Globe theatre was had the fire, they had to close it, and then also the Blitz, we closed all the theatre land in London. So it's not as if it's going to be closed and it's not going to reopen. So just listening to what the public have said tonight, that great questions. I'm glad I called it in, but I've got a different view on it now, and I'm glad that I listened to everything that what was said tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kimmatz, for those very positive points and valid ones. Okay, I'm going to slide down the IM and go back to where I had people waiting, and let me just have a look. I will be coming to Councillor de Wigendine, Perry and Chapeltay. I just want to go back to Councillor Pearl at this point. You've heard Councillor Harper mention that I've obviously been considering the call-in. I've listened through the questions I've been asked. I've seen the weight of people's passion, and certainly from the people we've let speak to us as a committee here tonight. I realise what you've got in the IM. Have you given, or Ms. Parfitt, have you taken that off so it's in one sort of section where we can all go back and look at it? Because what I've done, Councillor Pearl, after reading your letter that you sent to me and the call-in, I then spoke with Councillor Harper and officers, and I've come up with a rewording, if you like, of the recommendations that came from Earl, and taking into your consideration of what you're putting forward and the members who signed your call-in, and indeed I feel what the public are asking for. So I wonder if you would indulge me in, I'm not going to call it an amendment at this point, but I would like everybody to see what points I'm making and just give people a couple of minutes to read that, and then I'm happy to just take your litmus test of what I'm putting before the committee, and then I will go to the committee. But if you would indulge me, I've realised that you potentially have a proposal, but I think it encompasses that in here. But if you could just bear with me, if we can share the screen of what I gave to Ms. Parfitt to put up. It's 5 points. The recommendation was 4, but I think that to pay particular attention to what I've highlighted in 4 and 5, because I think that's expanding on the points you make. And I've also noted that I would be, in a sense, clarifying that we are calling the whole of this the Hazlitt Arts Centre and not just the Hazlitt Theatre, because as we've heard, it's a more than that. It's the Corn Exchange, it's the Fourth Wall, it's the Graham Clark, it's the Maidstone. It's all of these things, and we must consider them all at the same time. So if can I just have a yes or a no from you, Councillor Pearl, to just put it up on the screen, if that's okay?
Can you actually hear me? Sorry.
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that the call-in has got a reaction and is springing people into actions which you weren't actually otherwise going to be doing. And, I thought Councillor Kimmatz summed it up as well when he said that, we certainly, thank Paul for sort of acknowledging that, Councillor Harper for acknowledging that call-in was the correct move. Yes, I will indulge you by all means to display it, but on the point of order, I'm sure you're aware.
No,
I moved first, so
I'm happy to go through the process of what you've got. If you don't find it either is what I've got here, we can just go through a simple voting.
what I would say is, you say, give us a couple of minutes to look at it.
Yeah, sure. It's
important. A couple of minutes, couple of months,
But no, I really do want, because
yes,
yours isn't saying have a couple of months.
Couple of months.
Well, it's saying about 7 weeks, isn't it? If you do the sums, 19th of January 2021, for the matter to be reconsidered. I think my point is that yes, there's lots to consider here. You're now going to try and blindside us by putting up something, and maybe it will be very good. But I do just sort of think, maybe you could have mentioned to me beforehand what you were proposing, because I did, after all, write to you and put out a couple of options of what I was suggesting.
So, Councillor Ms. Parfitt, would you please share your screen if you have the document of 5 points in front of you?
Yes, Chairman, if you just give me a moment just to make sure that is visible, if you can let me know.
Should be coming through. You've got a box. I can see it. So if all of the committee and those watching wish to obviously have a read.
Could it be made a bit bigger, please?
Your glasses on, Dave.
To technology.
Chairman, just as a suggestion, perhaps it should be read out, given that people are watching on. Although I'm saying that they'll see it on the screen.
Okay, a good idea. If it won't confuse people's concentration, that it be recognised that the subsidy paid to Parkwood Theatres to operate the Hazlitt Arts Centre is not sustainable under the council's new medium-term financial strategy. 2, the council should seek to reduce its monthly expenditure on the Hazlitt Arts Centre complex to a maximum of £8,630, that being the amount it would cost for the council to mothball the building. The Head of Regeneration and Economic Development enter into discussions with Parkwood Theatres to negotiate an agreed termination of the contract of the Hazlitt Arts Centre. And these are the 2 important points. I mean, there was an adjustment in that bit, but for the short term, until February 21, officers continue to pursue appropriate use of the Hazlitt Arts Centre in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee, should any uses be found. And for the medium term, that a report be presented to the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee in February 21 to scope and future model for arts and cultural services to be provided from the Hazlitt Arts Centre, which includes the criteria and illustrative timetable for reopening the various elements of the Hazlitt Arts Centre, taking into account any COVID-19 restrictions that may still apply.
Chair, it's Councillor Newton. Can you hear me?
Yes, certainly. Go ahead, Gordon.
Can you confirm that the 40 staff that are flagged up in the email are actually all furloughed?
Sorry, in the email? What email?
Well, in the various media email thing. Well, various email articles, printed articles. Can you confirm that they were employees or are employees and they are furloughed? Because at some extent, when this opens up again, we will need the experience of those people. I just reserve my right at the moment on this one.
Thank you, Gordon. Could I ask Councillor Foster, Mr. John Foster, to come back on that one, or Mike Evans?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's not a figure that I recognise. What I am led to believe is that in September, Parkwood made a number of the casual staff on 0 hours contracts redundant, but have retained their technical and managerial staff, which are now on furlough.
So I think their intentions were made clear to us about what they were going to be doing earlier in this process. But I thank you for your question, Gordon. I think that's clarified it as much as possible. Don't always read or agree with what you see, and you're right to raise the question to clarify it. Thank you very much. If I just go back to Councillor Pearl at this point, just for his initial soundings, and then I will listen to obviously the people who indicated prior to the people who have now spoken, and your indulgence to let me have a look at this to see if we can come to some sense of yes or right or no. I want to stand by my first, which case I would go to Councillor Perry in the order as the seconder.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is better. This is better than it started as, and as I say, I'm pleased that you have reacted to the call-in, and you are now trying to set out some basis for bringing about a reopening in due course. I would simply refer you back.
A way forward. All right.
I would simply refer you back.
Sorry, you cut out, Jonathan. I was just.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I would simply refer you back to the points I made a number of times, that in effect what you're doing here in your first 3 points is you're cutting the budget, you're taking that away, and you're taking away all the staff. And yes, you are then thinking of ways to reopen in 4 and 5, but those are all from the point of having to start again from scratch. And so I would sort of suggest with respect that given that my motion was based on the idea that let's not slash and burn immediately before we figure out the way ahead. Let's actually pause the slashing and burning and then figure out the way ahead before we consider commencing with it. I would suggest that with respect we go back to my the motion I moved first.
Okay, in which case I will then go to the seconder of your motion, to Councillor Perry, then back to Councillor Bryce, then Councillor de Wigendine.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've had a lot of very good speakers tonight, and I was very impressed with the words of Katie Penn, who emphasised the importance of what I would call regional theatre, and it's a building block for all theatre in this country. And I won't go on any more, but it is terribly, terribly important. I was a member of the Earl Committee, but I was a substitute member. And one of the problems I've had is I didn't see all the working papers, and I certainly didn't see the yellow pages. In fact, the first time I saw them, when they appeared in the local press. That says about everything, I think. I won't dwell on the access to information issue. So when I read the paper, I was a little surprised that it was a little bit short on certain issues. It made no mention of the vaccine, it no mention of the furlough, which we all know has been extended. It made no mention of the funding arrangement that our MP is still searching for. So it gave me the impression that the whole thing was a bit rushed. And I think we need a bit of breathing space on this. And this is why I really do support the deferment. We're not doing ourselves any favours by, as I think Councillor Pearl put it very well, of a slash and burn. I understand where the Earl Committee was coming from, and Councillor Harper really does have my sympathy. He's done a lot of hard work on this, and all the permanent members. But I do think we need time to breathe. When I read the report, I felt it needed more work. And I think this is far too important an issue for it just to be decided on tonight. We need more work on this, and I think deferment is the only sensible solution. Thank you.
Councillor Perry, could I just ask a question? You made the point that you sat at Earl, where you voted unanimously with everybody else. Are you now saying that you hadn't had chance really to read the items?
Exactly. Exactly. I'm very, very annoyed about it. And I'm equally annoyed about the first press release that went out, which I think was, quite frankly, I think as Councillor Nagy has alluded to, was not a very clever thing to do. It was improved with the second press release, I have to say. But I think that press release was very premature and should never have gone out in the form it went out. But I had not seen all the key working papers, and this is the problem for substitute members. Thank you.
Okay. Righty-ho. You've made reference to Katie Penn, who I indeed spoke very clearly and very concisely, but I think she spoke referring to a period of 2008 to 13, which actually was when the borough was in charge of it. But I still think she spoke very passionately.
No, Chairman, can I come back on that? I was referring to her statement about the importance of regional theatre. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, no, I was just alluding to the times that she was bringing forward. I wasn't implying that you were doing that. Please, no. Okay, we'll go back to Councillor Bryce, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on how you think this could be taken forward from the Chair. Just to clarify, I think what I'm seeing in front of us is two choices. So one choice is to pretty much stick with the original decision, which is to terminate the contract with Parkwood, and then make firmer the commitment to say that something will be done with the theatre and we'll explore the options going forward. But it doesn't really give us a firm commitment to what will be done, who will do that, how much it will cost, and you know, in terms of rehiring staff, advertising for staff, recruiting staff, retaining staff, training staff, installing a new ticketing system, and all of those things, you know, it doesn't really make provision for those. So I'm struggling to think if we're making this decision on a cost basis, I don't really have a cost comparison to say, well, terminating a contract, yes, it might cost us to pay out for something we're not receiving at the moment, but it doesn't really tell me, okay, well, what's the cost of actually setting something up? Because the cost of advertising and training and taking staff on, skilled staff that can, you know, obviously do the Hazlitt and the community proud, I don't have those figures in front of me to compare like with like. I think the choices that I've got in front of me are either to say, well, let's go for something and make a commitment to something happening at some point with somebody at the future, but I don't have those numbers in front of me. So that makes me prompt the question of if we do that, we're not coming back to the potential to apply for any funding that's ongoing at the moment, and then it prompts questions to me around, well, is the contract? I've been told that by somebody it runs to 2023. Is there the scope to terminate the contract? And what's the potential legal situation if the contract is terminated way in advance of when it would expire? And I don't know whether or not that discussion is to take place behind closed doors because, you know, it's people's jobs and livelihoods, etc.
Well, it's also a third-party company, so that's why these things do have to take that into account. And indeed, that was part of the reason for the delay on Friday on Friday, that press release went out, was because we said we would hold off and wait to hear how they wanted to handle it. So that was a reason that it got to the almost nth hour, and we went with the minimum, which we then followed up on the Monday, as you've heard.
Yeah.
But I do also think that my point 3, about negotiating the agreed termination. That is why we can't bring to you at this point exactly what those details will be or what you're setting it against. As far as the medium-term financial strategy needs to understand, we need to make a saving because we cannot find an additional 150-something odd £1,000, and that's the cut we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, but
because we can't deliver what can be delivered because of COVID. And the last point at 5 says, taking into account any COVID restrictions, they may still apply.
Chair, if I may, if you would indulge me, the decision I'm struggling with is the decision to take it back to Earl and get them to flesh out some of the questions that, these kinds of questions that I'm being asked by residents and other people. And that's, I know it's all money, but that's kind of a month or so. Other people are exploring other funding streams. So I suppose what I'm saying is I appreciate what you're saying, what you're trying to do, but I appreciate it's a really difficult task, but I'm being asked to say, well, we might be able to terminate the contract. We don't know how much that will cost. We're spending money at the moment, which we have to save, but we're kind of, I suppose I'm saying, well, what's the issue in taking it back, delaying it till after Christmas until we've got a bit more certainty on those issues, and then, doing more of a working up in terms of understanding better the numbers around your proposal.
Can I actually point out, though, Councillor Bryce, that my proposal here says actually allowing for more negotiation and more collection of detail, because Councillor Pearl says on the 19th of January, and I'm saying at the February, Earl, because we need to get more movement on the COVID situation, how the vaccine's running, being given out, what effect it's having, and whether indeed there is scope to stay where we are potentially, but at a greatly reduced amount. I don't know. That could be another option, couldn't it? We have asked, and it was a no at that point. They told us how much they need. But my point is, my option goes to February 21, and Councillor Pearls is asking it to come to the 19th of January. Sorry.
Whilst reducing the budget and firing all the staff.
Well, that's not on the cards, because the furlough continues till the end of March.
Sir, if I remember your resolution correctly, the second point is reduce the budget to 8,630, being the cost of mothballing.
Yeah, but that's a proposal for 2021.
That's a resolution that you've got in there.
Yeah, that will take effect.
So if you took that out,
why would I want? Well, the proposals and the priorities that have been set out in the medium-term financial strategy include the savings that we're intending to make by having this figure used and not £20,000 a month. So I'm not really in a position to take that out completely. Yours doesn't address that at all. It delays until February, which is almost the same time as we have to look at budget in actual pounds, shillings and pence, because things change weekly, and if we have a third spike, it would change again. But so anyway, we'll leave proposed and seconded. Was Lottie perfect? Karen Chapeltay was next, please.
Thank you. I sympathise with the members of the ERL. They were in an extremely difficult position and they had to take a very difficult decision. And I think it's very clear that there isn't a single councillor who actually wishes to close the theatre or indeed any other part of the arts centre. I think their decision was largely around stemming the losses. We're paying for a service that we are simply not receiving, and we don't have the money any more than any other council or business does just at the moment. And if we don't stem the losses, do we raise the council tax or do we cut some other service? It's an almost impossible situation. However, I think when this was first mooted, we didn't have such good news. We now know that there are more vaccines available. We may not know exactly when they'll be rolled out, but it does look as though we could be back to a relatively normal life by Easter next year, April, in which case we're only talking about saving a relatively small amount of money over 4 months ahead of us. The other thing I feel is a concern that has not yet been fully covered covered, in fact, Councillor Bryce touched on it briefly, is if we do mothball it, what is the initial startup cost when we try to revive the Arts Centre later on? So if we were to save only £10,000 a month between now and April, and I appreciate that only is probably not the best way to put it, and yet we were to spend at least that much on bringing it out of its mothball condition, we would actually have lost overall. And I therefore think that it is wise to delay the decision for a little bit longer until we have more clarity on when we might actually be back to a relatively normal way of approaching things.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I did slide the IM message up far too fast with my touch screen. Go back to Councillor de Wigendine, Councillor Gooch and Councillor Mackay, and then I will see who's below that. I think that's the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happier that we're no longer talking about cancelling a contract. I think that's a very dangerous thing to try and talk about. I mean, let's be serious. This company has a 15-year contract, and the papers say that the first 7 years had been very successful. Yes, this year is horrible, but the fact is that the following 7 years should be very good. And yet, we're trying to get out of this contract. We're trying to get out of this contract at a time when government is spending billions saving companies and jobs, and that doesn't really look in the spirit of getting through all this together. We spoke about this, and this is the first point I'm going to make, that if we're going to get out of this, and we understand that the company itself didn't actually make, is not hugely profitable for them. But if we're going to get out of this contract with them, it's something that we have to negotiate with them and they have to agree. So I want to ask the officers, as my first question, and I do have a follow-up or two, is that what they're planning to do, and how do they see that going?
Chair, if I may,
please. Yes, sorry, Mr. Foster, carry on. Had Nick stopped? Sorry, was that a stop, Nick, or did you?
Sorry, yes, thank you.
Right,
yeah.
Sorry, sort of an up at the end. Sorry, carry on.
So I don't want to get into too much detail about contract negotiations, other than ideally we certainly would like to negotiate a termination of the contract. But clearly if a negotiated ending of the contract isn't possible, then we will revert to the contract, and there are a number of different means within that for us to end the contract. But I don't think I'd like to do anything more, say anything more in detail in a part one session. Thank you.
Okay, I do appreciate that, and the thing I get from this is that this report says this has worked very well. It accepts we have a COVID issue, but it says we will start to reopen this, and has been said a number of times, we will look for a tender for another manager. It's not looking to tender this again, but a number of people, and actually I'm not going to go back through it again, but a number of people have said we will just tender for another manager. So it actually just does look like we're trying to get rid of this particular one. Could you comment on that?
Yes, I can. It's nothing to do with a particular post or manager. If we were to terminate the contract with Parkwood, then at the appropriate time, when conditions allow us, then we would look to procure a new operator for the theatre under a new contract, and we will be able to identify what that contract would look like once we've got a better understanding of COVID, the restrictions that we might still be living under, and what the arts and cultural industry is looking like at that particular moment in time.
Okay, but the real deal is when we're able to get back up and running, we wanted it as fast as possible. And I hear a lot of people saying, oh, this is going to carry on forever, blah, 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 and it's going to be very, very different going forward. But I go to Southeast Asia a lot, and 20 years ago and 10 years ago, they had SARS and they had bird flu. But do you know, they didn't have years and years and years of these things going on. They actually got back and mass entertainment returned to normal. And if you're going to do this and get back together and get it going again as fast as possible, sacking everybody doesn't seem to be a very bright way of doing it. And if we do that, starting off from scratch, now, I mean, I don't know particularly the people that they have at Parkwood, but I certainly know, I think I know, and the council, we have the specialists, we would need to do it ourselves. So we'd be starting from scratch. So necessarily, it would not be as soon as possible, would it?
John, do you know a timescale that it could feasibly take? I mean, this really sort of it's a how big is the whole project, and that's not necessarily what we can really ascertain until we have done what I'm asking to have done, or in item 3, which is to talk with Parkwood Theatres to a larger extent, more than we have, and I understand the last time was yesterday or even this morning, I'm not sure.
I'll say something else about the budget. We're talking about reducing the monthly cost to 8,630. However, we have a contractual cost, and until you actually deal with that contract and you actually either have an agreement or there are methods in the contract whereby you can do, although I understand there is no break to the contract. And actually, this is one thing I want to ask. Actually, I'm not going to hold on this. In these papers, there are references to external legal advice. And I have to tell you that officers may have seen this, but officers are not being asked to make a decision. And I'm going to say that I will never make a decision where I'm told that there has been external legal advice which I won't be shown. Officers may well see it. If officers can make a decision, they can do so. I will never make a decision where I'm told there is external non-negotiable.
Right, I don't know if it was me that dropped out or whether it was Nick that dropped out.
Last bit.
I didn't hear the last 2 sentences. Is Nick still there?
Did you hear? Shall I try again?
Just the last bit about, I think,
That's all
saying
I'm going to
you
say.
understand there was external legal advice, but because you haven't seen it, you will never be able to.
I will never make a decision based on being told there's legal advice that I'm not allowed to see, and that's non-negotiable. Full stop.
Okay. Right. Next on my list was Faye Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, may I thank the wonderful emails that I've received. I think to hear the heartfelt emotion, I think, has been a real experience, and it just goes to show how much our theatre and the whole centre is much loved, much valued But of course we knew that. And what the difficulty is, how we pay for it. My question is, how can we manage, just let's assume the worst case scenario, well, I think financially the worst case scenario is that we continue as we are, we pay the 240 grand for this whole financial year without any service or with a minimal service, but that still doesn't do, just let's suppose that still doesn't work, that our current operator still can't operate, and we might be faced with another year to pay out 240 odd grand with no service. To me, that's the worst case scenario. We've got a timetable. We need to decide next year's budget. We usually look at it round about December, so that February, the whole budget for next year can be approved in February. So I think I'm needing to ask Mark Green, is it possible that, or could we get away with literally just paying the 240 grand for the year without having received any service?
Do you mean next year, Faye, or do you mean this year? This year, we can't do anything. We won't be able to do anything. Any negotiation will have a length of period, and I would have said we're going to get to the end of the year and have to have spent this. But the figure that's in our papers before us in item 2 is talking about the potential for next year's budget and moving forward.
Yeah. And
so, Mark, can you ratify that and answer Faye's question? Sorry to butt in.
If the question is, can we pay 240,000 next year for the theatre, regardless of whether it's open or not? Well, yes, we could, because in the end, setting a budget involves making choices about different priorities. And if members choose that that is the priority, then yes, certainly you can make that decision. It'll have consequences elsewhere. But in the end, it's for you as members to decide what you think are going to be the priorities for the council.
Thank you. That just means that we would have to find the £240,000 from somewhere else, whether it's, I don't know, emptying bins or closing a park or something. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Malcolm Mackay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, what a dilemma we got ourselves into here. I thought I knew which way I was going to vote before this. I can't say I do now. What we do know is, what we've been told, is what the council does not want to pay. Mark says, I don't want to be paying 20,000 a month for a service I'm not receiving. Makes perfect sense. I will pay £6,630 to mothball the theatre, so I can save just over 13,000 a month. But that does not tell us what you would pay when the theatre reopens, because presumably it's still going to cost you £8,630, and if the theatre reopens, there's going to be a cost. We know you don't want to pay 20,000 a month. What do you want to pay? Now, the other point I'm really struggling with here is, I'll labour the point about the press release, the first one. Absolutely appalling. And apparently at the time, Parkwood had already issued redundancy notices for the bulk of their staff, who are 0 hours contract. Their other staff, the management and technical side, they're furloughed. This is Parkwood that closed the Hazlitt, not Maidstone Borough Council. So Parkwood made their staff redundant, furloughed a few, I don't think there's nothing stopping John Foster negotiating with Parkwood now and seeing what the best deal he can get out of it. You don't need a resolution from any committee. You negotiate with Parkwood, you see what the best deal you can get and come back to the committee and say, this is the best deal I got. And then the committee can either accept or reject it. But I would say this, the long-term future for the Hazlitt, and we've got it for another 97 years, and we can only use it, fortunately, for arts, drama, and such like. We've got to, there's no point in having it and not using it. But ultimately, or very shortly, we've got to move it to a model which is sustainable. If we do nothing, every month we will pay £3,900 in business rates. That's included in the 8,630. That's ridiculous. If it's run by Maidstone Borough Council or run by a private organisation such as Parkwood, we are highly unlikely to receive grants from people like, Children in Care, National Lottery or the Arts Council. Why would they? They don't issue grants to councils or private companies. But we would need to move to a model where the Hazlitt Arts Centre, if that's what we're going to call it, what's that, HAC, is a charity or foundation professionally run, because that immediately would save you what, nearly £40,000 in business rates and the ability to apply for grants. Now, I was looking at the Icon Theatre in Chatham, which operates out of the Brook Theatre, which is the Old Town Hall, had a seating capacity of 400. They raised over £120,000 in grants from Artsmark, BBC Children in Need, National Lottery, Arts Council. Now, they are just one of the users of the Brooks Theatre. They don't run the Brooks Theatre, but they have an artistic director, they have other professional people. And that surely must be the business model we're working with. I'm not precious about a company called Parkwood Theatres. If the staff from Parkwood are excellent and a charity trust, hopefully, may need the services of those people that used to work for Parkwood. That's who I would be precious about, the staff. But bear in mind, Parkwood have furloughed these people or made them redundant. Now, I'm not quite sure where that gets me, really, except that I think to a degree, Martin, I would agree with you that we need to come back to this in January, not February. And we need to put our thinking caps on PDQ as to how we go forward on this. And I think, Mr. Green, you need to be able to say what budget you would be happy with in the interim. It might be on a sliding scale, but you can't just say, I don't want to pay 20,000, I will pay £6,630, but that only gets you a mothballed theatre. And none of us want a mothballed theatre. We want to know how we get to having the Hazlitt Arts Centre operating. And where's the dosh? That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Can I just clarify something? You said we need to look at this. I've said just to be able to get as much under the table and as many ideas as possible and as many options, I'm saying until the February Earl, not the January Earl.
Well, I'm saying you need to get your skates on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. I've now got Councillor Pearl. Sorry, Councillor Powell. Similar. Very similar.
You
know what I mean. Yeah, absolutely.
It's getting late.
Begins with a P. Yeah, I've been up since 8, as we all have.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just clarify one thing after all the comments that have been mentioned just recently? It's not 240,000 the net figure, is it? The net figure is 150, 160,000. Is that correct?
140.
I'm a bit quiet.
Mark, can you clarify that? Or John, I haven't got those figures right in front of me. I've got a whole desk of paper.
Yes, Chair. So I think Councillor Power is suggesting that the savings wouldn't be the full 240,000 because we would still be
correct.
Having some expenditure on looking after the building. I just wanted to say though that costs us if we do nothing, but within that £8,630, there is a sort of a caretaker operator option for us to employ somebody to help us find short and medium term uses for the building. So that might be the existing uses if possible, or it might be alternative uses, so that 8,630 cost may well indeed come down through the hire of the spaces or for short term leases.
May I ask a question?
Okay. So, Martin, sorry, just one second. So we are. I mean, whatever way we dress it, the amount of money is less because we might need that person if the theatre was open normally anyway. Mark has just mentioned that yes, we could keep the theatre open, but it would mean that something else would need to suffer in the meantime. Well, we don't know what that is at this stage because we haven't discussed it. I thought Councillor de Wigandin actually summed everything up perfectly, and what Councillor Mackay said completely complemented that as well. And yeah, I think if we can just come back to right back to the beginning where Councillor Pell put some motions forward, I think that there's been a lot discussed. I think we all agree that there's absolutely no way at all that decisions can be made tonight. The only decision that can be made is to actually kind of push this back to whether it be January or February. I'm not fussed, to be quite honest. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and we haven't got long to answer them. But thank you for bringing me back in again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bryce and then Councillor Mackay again, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, if I've missed this, but I just keep coming back to the point that we're being asked to make a decision based on, and I appreciate it maybe because the discussion needs to be taken into a closed session, but I'm struggling to see the certainty around we do have a negotiated position where we're confident the contract can be terminated, and the cost of that, and then the cost of starting up and doing something ourselves. So I'm struggling with being asked to having this carrot dangled, if you like, of saying, well, we're going to save this much money, but actually I've got no certainty that money will be saved because I don't have the figures in front of me to see, you know, whether or not that's feasible, possible, how much it would cost, and how much your alternative would cost either. So I don't know. Has that been addressed?
Mr. Foster, if we were to go back to what was the content of the yellow pages, we would have to go back into closed session. However they might have been published, I would still like to go to closed session because I do not wish a third party's business to be discussed in public. But is that what Councillor Bryce is actually asking for clarification, and would that enable you to tell her?
Well, if it's only, I completely agree with you, Chair, and I feel it's a very sensitive subject, isn't it? So I don't want to prolong the debate if other members are quite happy and feel that they already have good knowledge of that. But that's just my question mark that's kind of hanging in my mind. But I don't want to cause councillors... No,
it's a valid point, Councillor Bryce.
If I may, Chairman, it's a challenging one to answer in the sense that we haven't started negotiations with Parkwood yet. So I couldn't tell you what that cost might look like. And of course, sometime in the future, when we procure a new contractor for the for the Hazlitt, then that would depend on our procurement route, how long that would take. But I wouldn't expect the costs to be enormous. And of course, then whatever the contract says will determine potentially what the contract costs might be, and then that might be determined as well by the state of the arts and cultural sector at that particular time. So there's a lot of unknowns in there, I'm afraid.
Okay, so we're being asked to debate a cost saving, but we don't really know what the cost of that cost saving might be, and we don't really know the future cost of replacing the service that we're thinking is costing us too much.
We do know what the cost saving would yield if we carry on in the same situation as we are now. Because the potential saving, if we go forward and mothball, if they're unable to carry on with the contract that they have, which is provision of X, because they can't do that because of COVID-19 restrictions. And let's face it, tomorrow we will know where we're going to be in the next month, potentially. I would say, yes, we do know what our savings, but they will come into effect in 2021-22. And that's what that figure is at item 2 on what I put forward and what came from Earl.
But are we saying, but that doesn't that figure mean that that relies on terminating that contract?
Yes, because that's the figure of the saving we can make without them there.
But my point is that we don't know, and as Mr. Foster's just confirmed, we don't know if we could terminate the contract. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said. Sorry, Councillor Bryce.
It's okay. I just want to be. I'm sorry if I'm being. It's late. I'm sorry if I'm.
Yeah. So it's not the case as whether we could. It's what the exact cost of doing so will be. Now, there's no penalty in the contract for ending the contract before its review date, and that goes on till 2028, I think it is.
Is that on both sides, John?
Yes, that's right. So it will be hopefully by agreement, but if not, I'll say there are means within the contract for us to terminate. But the detail of that has yet to be discussed. And I'd like that to be an amicable conversation with Parkwood, and they've led me to believe that would be an amicable conversation with them.
Okay, but we're not, as you say, we're not confirmed on how much that cost would be. Would it be an option to have that conversation and bring that cost then back? I know it means that we pay out for slightly longer, but we would be able to have that conversation, bring that cost back, and then discuss that in terms of the cost-benefit analysis.
Well, I think we're getting into the negotiations of the contract, of course, and so I wouldn't like to.
I know what you're going to say, John. Yeah, okay, we'd have to take that into another session. Yeah, thanks ever so much, folks.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Councillor Mackay, back again, please.
Just a bit. You were saying, John, there's nothing confidential, I presume, and if you don't want to say anything, don't. But you're saying the cost of mothballing could be mitigated by having temporary uses for the Hazlitt Theatre. What did you have in mind?
We would obviously like to speak at an appropriate time to the various user groups of the theatre. obviously we need to be careful about continuation of services there, but that's one possible uses. But there may well be other users that may come forward, particularly when they know that the space is available, and we can offer vacant possession, which clearly we can't do now because we have a sitting tenant and we have a contract with Parkwood.
Such as what? Who would likely want that space?
Well, there could be a number of different groups. I have spoken to one group confidentially, but that was in confidence, just to sound them out. But I wouldn't like to say an open session.
Okay, but I mean, we've been told that this can only be used for arts, drama, and such like.
Yeah, we can't go into this detail, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, right.
It would comply with what the remit and what is being asked of the space. So the restriction that's in place, I believe, would be permissible with the people that is briefly been spoken to. And it's nothing more than that. Have I dropped out?
No, you're still
all right, okay, fine. It went very quiet and everything froze. Sorry, everything froze. If I may, Councillor Mackay, can I go on to Councillor Clark?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think one of the sort of elephants in the room is, there's much sort of discussion about things coming out speedily with Parkwood when things change. I guess, as I say, the elephant in the room is, given it's already been mentioned about laying off of 0 hours staff, are they actually in a position where they could come back quickly? From my just looking at the papers, listening to the discussion and all of the feedback, which was very beneficial from the public, I just wonder whether we've sort of paid this amount of funds towards this organisation, obviously in this year's budget. We know that there is a level of staffing that are on furlough. We don't know what's going to happen when furlough ends, given that they've asked the council, or they're still effectively taking the same amount during this time as if they would have been when they were in operation, and yet presumably their staffing has actually gone down. It just makes me wonder whether they are actually in a position where they could be the group that could bring this forward quickly. And you don't need to mention any specific details in response. This is to officers now, but I just think that's something where, we are, as a council, we know that we want the facility. We're not looking necessarily at profit, but we are looking at the overall picture of how much it's costing us, what other services will be impacted, and what we want from the centre going forward. So I do sort of wonder if we might be in a position where we sort of, if we were to move forward and continue this arrangement, we might find out in maybe not even a long period of time that actually what we thought could happen with that centre under its current contract may not necessarily be quite what we thought it would be.
Martin, you're on mute.
In 10 or 15 minutes, we will have to take a vote to extend beyond 10:30. So I'm going back to people. Please, could you make it poignant? Because I need to, we have a proposer and a seconder for the motion from Jonathan Pearl. If that were to fall, I would come back with my proposal or I can put it forward as an amendment. I don't mind which way round we go. Councillor de Wigendine, please.
Thank you very much. I simply think we don't have the information that we need on this. Now, we're told that this contract costs an awful amount of money, which is a large amount of money, which is true, and that the service provider is unable to do anything this year, which is also true. We're also told that they want every penny of every monthly amount, which actually seems rather unreasonable. I think the right way forward is, I mean, we have Christmas and everything else, but actually to give officers this month to actually go back to the company and find out exactly what they would cost, and because we know we understand they have people redundant, they have people furloughed, actually what the cost is, and come back with that figure in 1 month at the next meeting, which is probably the beginning of January. And when we get that from Parkwood, then we will know where we are going forward, and we will also have more advice for councillors, and councillors would need this advice if some kind of break clause is going to be used. If Parkwood have been so unreasonable that a break clause is operable, then councillors should be given that advice before they take this decision. But I think, I find it strange that this company, which knows it's out of action pretty much for a year, has its staff on furlough, has been making people redundant, and is still saying, even though we can't do everything, we're still going to charge you every penny. I find it strange that that's their position, and I would be interested to see their communications which say so. It would help our position if that were so, but I think at this point, in the absence of a partner who is unreasonable, I think we have to go through the procedure of saying, we have a contract which is difficult. It's not a 1-year contract, it's a 15-year contract. We have to deal with it appropriately. Now, I understand the council wants to save money, but it can't save money by breaking contracts which it should keep. So I think we should give officers 1 month to come back with actual detail, not saying, oh, well, we're going to do this doesn't work, that doesn't work. Actual detail, have a discussion with the company, come back with what figures actually say, come back with a suggestion whether or not a break clause could be used, and actually provide us with some detail, and then we can make a real decision. I'm very unhappy with making a decision based on absolutely nothing really, and based on officers saying they have legal advice but whatever, and we can just break a contract, oh yeah, forget about it. Actually, I'm not really happy with that. Thank you.
Right, I do want to draw this to some sort of conclusion. I missed Councillor Springett. Please keep it short and sweet. I would then like to go to the vote on what's been proposed, and then put mine forward if the Councillor Pearls fails. Val.
Thank you. I think we're all getting tired now, Martin, and I think this is too big a topic. I think there's two issues: the long-term future of the theatre and what we do in the meantime. I think Nick's just hit the nail on the head, really. I just wondered, have we actually gone to Parkwood and said, Houston, we have a problem? I just wondered whether we've asked that question, because we put 600,000 a year into the museum, and I presume that's 50,000 a month, and we don't seem to be doing anything about that, but that's not earning any money. The leisure centre, we've got, it says in the report on page 34 of the second quarter financial update that they're now coming after us
for their losses, and we don't seem to be threatening to kick them out of running the leisure centre. I don't know whether Parkwood are good, bad or indifferent at running the theatre. I'll stay totally neutral on that, but this is not of their making. This situation is not their fault. They have been forced to close. And I just think we ought to go and talk to them and just say, we've got a problem. We can't keep paying this money out each month, but we understand this isn't of your making. And I just think, yes, time. My personal view is we support Jonathan Pearl's motion, defer it till January or February and just give it a little bit more time because things are moving so fast. Thank you.
John, I just want to ask, we have been speaking to them, yes or no, and laying this out in front of them. And am I correct in saying they've actually come back and said they actually want more than we normally would give them? Is that yes or no?
Yeah, it is. Yes, we have been speaking to them, and yes, they have written to us asking for a waiver of their obligations under the contract and the continuation of their subsidy.
Okay, right. So before us, we have the wording.
Martin, can I say a few words?
Yeah,
please?
sorry. I'm jumping to that. Okay. Yes, you haven't since you've given your briefing. Please,
Okay.
Poised to Kill.
Well, I've listened. It's been quite an interesting debate to listen to. I think one of the things people seem to be talking as if the Hazlitt Theatre is open now. We keep on saying let's not close it, let's keep it open. Well, who's managed to go and see a show in the Hazlitt since March? I think nobody has. And as the chair just said, Parkwood are asking for a disclaimer so they don't have to put any activities or shows on there until the 31st of March next year. So who will see a show from now to end of next March? Nobody. But what will we be doing between now and next March and beyond is paying for a contract which might have worked in the pre-COVID world when it was signed originally back in 2013. But hey, unless I've missed something since March, the world now is completely different. I'm not sitting in the town hall with you. Are we ever going to get back to town hall meetings? In a completely different world, which is what we're now in and where we will be going ahead, is a contract for X decades, which was drawn up in an old world, relevant anymore? I think that's one of the things you need to think about. Forget, as Malcolm Mackay said, who the contractor is. Just think, is that contract we drew up prior to COVID likely to be meeting the needs of a post-COVID society? And I think not. I think we need to give serious consideration to this. And I think one thing which has come up tonight is about the communications. Yes, communications can always be done differently. The first communication we sent out on the Friday after the Earl meeting, which was about 2 weeks ago on Thursday, was very short and succinct, and it was shorter than the original press release we had planned. There had been one where Martin and I were both involved in a number of quotes, and the reason we went for the very short one was because Parkwood had not confirmed if they had talked to their staff. And what we did not want to do was to put a press release out and then the staff find that their employer potentially maybe losing a contract before they had had time to talk to the staff. As has already been said, we know that most of the 0 hours staff, which is the vast bulk of the staff at the Hazlitt, probably 80%, have already been made redundant and no longer work for Parkwood. The few remaining staff are on furlough, so are not working at the venue now. So effectively, we have a venue which is closed, whatever we might want to think about it. And when we get to at some stage in the future, and as I say, we've been told nothing's likely to happen there before the 31st of March, we'll be in a completely different world. And I personally think the proposal suggested by Martin seems to me the best way forward. It leaves to me and Martin Round as vice chair flexibility to work with the
point of order.
Well, sorry, no, you know, I'm just pointing. I'm entitled. I've been asked if I wanted to respond to the debate, and I am. I don't see, you know, I didn't interrupt anybody else on this.
I'll come back to you straight after this, Councillor Pearl.
The other thing which has been talked about is how will we reboot the theatre? Well, you know, there are different ways of working. Obviously, not necessarily Maidstone. There are other theatre providers. There's other theatres who might want to have a link up with us. And as Malcolm Mackay clearly said, the charity route could well be one to go through, because it would save all the business rates on the site, and charities will be able to get grants which neither the council nor Parkwood would. And if down the road in Chatham, in 1 year alone, a community charity involved with running the theatre managed to get £120,000 in grants, that is more than we're talking of this, you know, the difference between our mothballing money and what the contract is now. So actually there are options available to us with what's being suggested by the chair, which would enable us to bring the theatre back probably as quickly as it ever might do if left, but also forking out money on a contract which potentially, as I say, in the new world going ahead, is not particularly relevant any longer because of the changed dynamics of the post-COVID world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. As Councillor Pearl has indicated in the IM messaging, we will go with the first proposal from Councillor Pearl. Are we all clear of what it says? Would you like me to read it out, or shall I ask Ms. Parfitt to read it out and then take a vote? It has been proposed and seconded. Ms. Parfitt, would you please read out the resolution and then take the vote?
Yes, Chairman. So I have that the 4 resolutions of the Earl Committee on the 12th of November 2020 concerning the Hazlitt be substituted with a resolution that the matter be deferred until the Earl Committee meets on the 19th of January 2021, so as to allow greater clarity on issues such as external sources of funding and COVID-related developments, and to facilitate further member and stakeholder engagement in determining the best method of retaining the Hazlitt for years to come.
Okay, is everybody absolutely clear what they are voting for?
Clear.
Lovely. Okay. Ms. Parfitt, please take the vote.
Chairman, may I ask a point of clarity on the wording?
Please.
So where it says that the matter be deferred until the Earl Committee meets, is that in specific reference that the matter be deferred to the Earl Committee?
Yes, until the Earl Committee meets.
If I may, the point is if we're substituting the Earl Committee's decision for this wording, the idea is that this is in effect a sort of, you know, Earl Committee decision, albeit one now made by P&R. If that makes sense.
We're overturning the Earls Committee as been given to us to consider, and it will go back to the 19th of January Earl Committee.
Yes.
There you are.
Thank you for that, Chairman. So I'll now go to the vote. So Councillor Bryce.
For Councillor Pearl's motion.
Thank you. Councillor Councillor Chapeltay.
For.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Gooch.
Against.
Councillor Harvey.
Against.
Sorry, would you be able to repeat that, Councillor?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Joy.
Against.
Councillor Mackay.
Against.
Councillor Mortimer.
Against.
Councillor Newton.
For.
Councillor Perry.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
For.
Councillor Round.
For.
Councillor Springett.
For.
Councillor de Wigan Shepherd.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. So that is 8 for and 7 against. That is carried.
Was that hearty laughter?
Really inappropriate.
I'm having a drink tonight.
Jolly good. Right, okay. In which case that goes back as stated, completely unsorted. Brilliant. Well done. Right, okay. Moving on then. Item 16. Now, we've got 3 more items. We either going to adjourn. The items requires a decision on the discretionary housing payments. We then have the tax reduction scheme, and also I think I've missed one. Where's the? Have we not got the garden?
Sorry, Chair. Can you take a vote to extend the deadline?
That's what I'm trying to work out now.
Councillor Chairman, can I just raise another matter, please?
Yeah.
Which is that the item on the council tax reduction scheme really needs to be considered by the committee, as it's due to go to council in December.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've only got 2 things that need this. So I'm proposing that we extend beyond 10:30, but with that in mind, we have the discretionary housing payments, the council tax reduction scheme, and the council-led garden community update, which is just for noting. So, are we happy to carry on? I will take your silence as approval.
Chairman, I was just going to say that these are fairly weighty items, and I don't know about other members, but my mind is now fairly fried. I understand the point that Mr. Green has just made about that we do need a decision, but obviously an adjourned meeting is something that we can have in a sort of matter of days. It doesn't need to sort of wait until after the or you interrupt the timetable for the council meeting.
Well, I've already made a proposal, so I need to, in which case, take a vote, which is taking up time from us getting on with it.
All right, look, if you want to go and do it. Sort of don't let me stop you. Let's not have any more votes and stuff.
No, exactly. Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay, item 16 then, please. The report will be introduced by Ms. Sheila Coburn.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'll try not to take it too long in my presentation. So Maidstone Borough Council is provided with an annual discretionary housing payment grant by the Department for Work and Pensions in order to provide additional financial support on top of the support awarded through the Housing Benefits Scheme. The budget available for this year is just over 406,000, and the budget was increased as a result of COVID from last year. 354 applicants were awarded a discretionary housing payment award last year, which were given for reasons such as a shortfall in rent while moving to a more affordable property, or providing removal costs because somebody is downsizing. The council already has a discretionary payment policy in place, which was last approved by the council in 2017. The council has been the policy, I beg your pardon, has been updated to provide clarity with the responsibilities of both the claimant and the council, such as making it clear that a discretionary housing payment is a short-term emergency fund, and that applications can be received by somebody acting on behalf of someone else who is vulnerable or needs support. And also that the customer is expected to take responsibility, such as taking tenancies at reasonable rents. So the committee is asked to recommend to full council to adopt the discretionary housing payment policy as detailed in the report and shown in Appendix 1. Thank you, members. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Sorry, it got to whiz down to the bottom of the IM to see if anybody has indicated. So, oh, good night all, it says there. Right, okay. I'm assuming at the moment nobody has indicated. So therefore we have one recommendation on the papers before us. And that is the Policy and Resources recommends full council to adopt the discretionary housing payment DHP policy as detailed in the report at Appendix 1. I'm
to
happy.
move it, Chair. If you,
Thank you very much. Is that Councillor Bryce?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'll second. Therefore, is anybody wishing to vote against this? I ask lest we do or don't have to take a vote. Don't hear anybody saying they wish to vote against this. Therefore, I will take your approval and unanimous approval as silence. Thank you very much. That is passed unanimously. Thank you very much for waiting so long, Mrs. Coburn, and we'll say good night to you. Thank you very much.
I still have another report.
Oh, do you? Oh, well, I won't say good night to you now. Don't go anywhere. No, see, turn my pages of the agenda, and there you are. Right. Yes, the tax reductions scheme, item 17. It's on pages 168 to 271. The report has 3 recommendations and 2 for noting. So please would you pray silence for Sheila Coburn. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report deals with the proposed change to the council tax reduction scheme for next year, 2021-22. You may recall Policy and Resources Committee decided on the 21st of January that we would introduce an income banded scheme for next year and consult on 3 income banded models that have been modelled by external consultants. The background to this is that there is a need to replace the current council tax reduction scheme as it is outdated because it is completely reactive to changes. The number of cases moving to universal credit and the multiple changes that occur result in multiple council tax bills being issued each time. So this brings challenges with the administration of council tax reduction, the collection of council tax, and is very confusing for customers receiving multiple bills. So the objectives that were considered when looking at an income banded scheme were to maintain the maximum award of 80% of council tax liability, protect disabled households, simplify assessments and reassessments, and maintain costs, that is, the total amount awarded to claimants in line with the current scheme had it been carried forward to next year. We went out to public consultation between 31st of July and 27th of September on 3 models that have been considered, which have been detailed in this report. Briefly, the first model is a simple income banded model which only takes into account employment earnings. The objectives I have just mentioned were all maintained within Model 1. The second model is the same as Model 1, but with an additional uplift of 5% for those claimants in respect of disability or sickness benefits in bands 2 to 5 for either themselves or their partner. This is on top of the protection they already receive under Model 1. The third model was reducing the maximum award to 70%, which was shown as another example, albeit not meeting the objectives to award 80% maximum for all claimants. The survey was issued to 12,400 residents, and there were 242 responses to the survey. Respondents were asked to rank their preferred model in order 1 to 3. Only 163 of those who responded actually answered this question. Model 2 was ranked the highest, followed by Model 1, then Model 3 as the lowest rated model. The recommended option in this report is option 2, to go with Model 2, which came out favoured in the public consultation. Within that model, 76% of claimants will fall into band 1, receiving 80% council tax support. And on the modelling that has been carried out, it has anticipated that 94% of those who receive disability or sickness benefits will fall into band 1 and receive maximum relief. So Policy and Resources Committee is asked to recommend to full council that Model 2 is adopted on the 9th of December for implementation from the 1st of April 2021. Thank you, members, and I await your questions.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much, Ms. Coburn, for this report. It's no surprise to some of us, of course, because I know that you passed it by us at a previous meeting, and I am very much aware that it's ever such a disappointing response, very, very low response. But even so, I know that the scheme, from how you've described it, is by far the easiest, one that you're recommending, option 2. It's easier to administer, easier to explain to people. So, Chairman, I would like to move the recommendations as shown on page 168, please.
Thank you very much. Do I hear anybody wishing to second? Councillor Mackay.
I'll second. Okay.
Well, Councillor has indicated to speak. If he doesn't, however, John, I'll come back to you. Thank you, Councillor Mackay.
Fine, Martin. You're asking me to speak, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you'd indicated to speak. Sorry, Malcolm.
I did. Thank you very much. A question for you, Sheila. The option you're proposing, would I be right in saying that most is the option you're proposing the one that most disadvantages the disabled, or does it most favour the disabled?
It most favours the disabled.
Yeah, we've gone with a different one, not option 1, Councillor Mackay.
If I could just explain, Councillor Mackay, after we met at the group leaders, and there was obviously quite a lot of discontent at those discussions. So I took on board your comments, and we are now recommending Model 2.
Thank you very much. If it wasn't going to be seconded, I'd second it.
Okay, right. I'll take yours because you indicated obviously with the intention to potentially do that. Thank you very much. So it's been promoted. It's been proposed and seconded. Therefore, Councillor Perry, did you wish to speak, or were you just there but pipped at the post to actually second?
Just pipped to the post, I think so.
Okay, in which case, does anybody intend to vote against this matter? I will wish to hear somebody say yay if they are. I can't hear anybody speaking, in which case I will say that as on the papers, as been proposed and therefore seconded by Councillor proposed by Councillor Gooch, seconded by Councillor Mackay, as on the papers, your silence will give approval. Thank you very much, which leads me swiftly on.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, and thank you very much for attending this evening. Thank you. Which leaves me swiftly on then to item 18, the council-led garden community update, which will be presented by William Cornell. This report is for noting. It starts on page 272 and goes only over to 278. There is one recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll be brief, given the timing and so on. The report is quite brief anyway, because these are monthly updates, and it's been a relatively quiet period in our activity. But the report deals with 4 areas of our work: the promotion of Heathlands through the local plan review, and this is really the headline. After all our work, you'll all be aware that Heathlands has made it through to the next stage of the local plan review and will feature in the sort of draft document for consultation in next month, which is really fantastic news. So that's the main takeaway from the paper. I also talk about our partnership with Homes England, which is strengthening. Homes England have their due diligence back now, which hasn't caused them any concern. So we're sort of moving on to the next stage of discussions towards developing a collaboration agreement that we can bring back to this committee in due course. I talk also about our reinvigoration of the discussions with the principal landowners. A key meeting will be taking place this Friday, and also touch on community engagement as well. But yes, the takeaway is that we've been successful in promoting Heathlands through to the next stage of the local plan review. But I'll be pleased to take any questions rather.
Thank you very much. I see Councillor Bryce stepping in.
Sorry, Tim, I couldn't get my mouse. Just a quick one. Sorry, who is the meeting with on Friday? Is it the Save Our Heathlands group, William?
No, Councillor Bryce. It's actually with the representative of the 5 principal landowners.
Okay, got it. Okay, great.
Okay, I don't see anybody else. This item is purely for noting, but in which case I'm happy to propose as recommendation on the papers on page 272 that
thank you.
Noted.
Yes.
Excellent, there we are. I think you've got that all as noted, everybody. I hope you haven't been too uncomfortable, William. Thank you very much for staying with us all the way through. Thank you to everybody. We have closing the meeting at 22:30. Thank you very much for all your input of all decisions, and thank you very much for attending this evening. Safe journey home, everybody. Stiff drink and nighty night.
I will do. Cheers, Martin.